Staff Sergeant Morgan Hayes lay motionless on the jagged ridgeline, her body pressed against the cold stone of the Hindu Kush Mountains. The scorching Afghan sun beat down mercilessly, yet she hadn't moved for 14 hours. Through the precision glass of her Schmidt and Bender 5:25 p.m. 2-scope, she watched 8 Navy SEALs moving through the valley below. They had no idea she existed. The radio crackled to life with Colonel Mitchell's voice cutting through the static. "That little girl you sent us better not slow down my SEALs, or their blood is on your hands." Morgan didn't respond. She controlled her breathing so steadily, it barely disturbed the fine dust beneath her Barrett M107 chambered in 50 BMG. At 28, she was one of the youngest female sniper-qualified soldiers ever attached to Joint Special Operations Command. Most people assumed she was just another intelligence analyst when they saw her 5'4" frame. The temperature read 96 degrees, a wind 4 to 6 mm left to right. She calculated a 2.1 mil hole left for drift. Range to target area 920 meters. Elevation adjustment plus 3.2 mils. Through her scope, she watched as Neptune element of SEAL Team 6 moved methodically through the compound below. They were conducting a sensitive site exploitation mission, searching for intelligence on a high-value target. Colonel Mitchell hadn't told them about their guardian angel perched high above. "Pride kills more soldiers than bullets," her father had always said. What unfolded before her was the culmination of a journey that began far from these mountains in the shadow of the Cold War. Montana, 1997. David Hayes stood behind his 9-year-old daughter, his weathered hands adjusting her small arms as she held the Remington 700 rifle. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of pine across the isolated shooting range he'd built on their property. "Remember Morgan?" he said in his thick Russian accent. "Reading wind is like reading water. Look for the ripples, the movement in the grass. The bullet will dance with the air." The crack of the rifle echoed through the valley as Morgan hit the target 300 yards away. "Not center, but close. Good." David nodded approvingly. Again. David Hayes was not just any immigrant. The neighbors in their small Montana town knew him only as the quiet foreigner who ran a precision rifle training school for law enforcement. Few knew he had been a Soviet Olympic biathlon champion before defecting in 1991. None knew the full truth except for one man. William Crawford's truck kicked up dust as it rumbled down the dirt road toward their cabin. At 60, the tall, lean former Vietnam veteran moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his skin. His silver hair and lined face told stories of decades under harsh suns in foreign lands. "Shooting lessons again, David," Crawford called out as he stepped from his truck, a bottle of bourbon in hand. "The girl's going to outshoot us both before she's old enough to drive." Morgan lowered the rifle and smiled. "Mr. Crawford, did you bring me anything?" "Manners, Morgan," David chided gently. Crawford laughed, reaching into his jacket to produce a small wooden box. "As a matter of fact, I did. Happy birthday, little ghost." Inside the box lay a compass, not modern, but a vintage military model with Cyrillic markings. "Soviet Army issue," Crawford explained. "From before your time back, when your father and I were on opposite sides." Morgan looked up confused. "Opposite sides of what?" The two men exchanged glances. "The world, little one," David said quietly. "Now put the rifle away properly. We will continue tomorrow." That night, Morgan pretended to sleep, but listened through the thin walls as her father and Crawford talked on the porch, their voices occasionally rising over the clink of glasses. "They're still looking, David," Crawford said. "Moscow doesn't forget. It was 15 years ago. The Soviet Union may be gone, but the people who want those files aren't." "What you took?" "I took nothing but my freedom," David interrupted sharply. "You and I both know that's not entirely true," Crawford replied. 53 confirmed kills in Afghanistan, the longest confirmed sniper shot of the entire Soviet campaign. The secrets in your head about their operations are still valuable. I'm a shooting instructor now. Nothing more. And my daughter is becoming quite the marksman. Like father, like daughter. She will have choices I never had," David said firmly. "America, not Russia, will be her home." Crawford's voice softened. "The agency still appreciates what you did. I'll keep watching out for both of you." Morgan clutched her new compass tightly, her young mind struggling to piece together the fragments of her father's past. Only years later would she understand that William Crawford was no ordinary family friend. He had been her father's CIA handler during the final days of the Cold War. Fort Benning, Georgia, 2018. The punishing Georgia heat was a different beast than Montana's mountains. Morgan Hayes, now 22, stood at rigid attention among 27 men. The Army Sniper School's latest class was nearing graduation, and she was the only woman. "Hayes," Sergeant First Class Miller barked. "Your final qualification score, Sergeant." 19 hits of 20 possible, Sergeant," she replied, eyes fixed forward. A murmur rippled through the formation. Only two others had scored higher. "Not bad for a quota case," someone muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Miller's head snapped toward the sound. "Did I ask for commentary, Private Jenkins? Drop and give me 50. The rest of you dismissed, except Hayes." As the formation dispersed, Miller approached her. "Walk with me, Hayes." They moved toward the range office, boots crunching on gravel. "You know what they're saying," Miller said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Sergeant." "That you're only here because the Army needed to check a diversity box. That standards were lowered." He stopped walking and faced her. "We both know that's bullshit." Morgan remained silent. "Your final stalking exercise is tomorrow. Perfect score puts you in the top 3 of the class. Distinguished honor graduate is within reach." "Yes, Sergeant." "Which means someone might try to make sure that doesn't happen." Miller's voice lowered. "Watch your 6, Hayes. Not everyone wants to see you succeed." That night, Morgan methodically cleaned her rifle while her bunkmate slept. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. She opened it to find Master Sergeant Torres, her direct supervisor from her home unit. "Got a minute, Hayes?" Torres asked, his voice hushed. They stepped outside into the humid night. "Someone tampered with your ghillie suit," Torres said without preamble. "Found it during a routine inspection. Bright orange marker on the back, only visible under UV light. You'd have been spotted within minutes during your final stalk tomorrow." Morgan felt cold despite the heat. "Can't prove anything, but I've requisitioned a new one for you." He handed her a folded bundle. "And Hayes, a friend of yours called. Said to tell you the ghost leaves no footprints." "Crawford," Morgan said quietly. Torres nodded. "Interesting friends you have. Former CIA deputy director calls in a favor for a junior enlisted. Must be some family friend. Word is he personally vouched for your father's asylum application back in '91. Torres studied her face. "You know, for someone with your background and skills, there are specialized paths in the service. After sniper school, I could put in a word. I just want to earn my tab, Sergeant. Fair and square." "Nothing's ever fair and square, Hayes, but you've got something most don't." He tapped his temple. "Your father taught you more than just marksmanship, didn't he?" The next day, Morgan completed her final stalking exercise with a perfect score. The instructors never found her position until she fired the simulated shot. When the class rankings were posted, she stood as Distinguished Honor Graduate. The whispers continued, but now they carried a different tone. No longer just diversity quota. Now it was the ghost. Syria, 2019. Dust swirled around the convoy of armored vehicles as they navigated the barren landscape. Inside the lead MRAP, Morgan checked her Barrett MRAD rifle one final time. The Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha she was attached to had been tracking an ISIS commander for 3 days. Captain Reynolds leaned toward her from across the vehicle. "You sure about this shot? Hayes, 1,800 meters, is pushing it even with perfect conditions." "Conditions aren't perfect, sir," she replied, "but they're good enough. If you miss, we lose our target and compromise the entire operation," Reynolds said, skepticism evident in his voice. Morgan didn't respond. She'd calculated the shot parameters repeatedly. Temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, wind speed, angle, declination, Coriolis effect, even the rotation of the bullet. Her father had taught her that shooting was mathematics made physical. The convoy halted behind a ridgeline. Morgan exited the vehicle with her spotter moving silently into position. Through her scope, she observed the target compound 1,800 meters away. The ISIS commander was expected to appear within the hour. Her radio crackled. "Ghost, this is Oversight. You have a visitor in the TOC." The Tactical Operations Center was 5 miles back. Who would be visiting during an active operation? "Can it wait, Oversight? I'm on target." "Negative, Ghost. Oversight Actual says to tell you the compass points both ways." Crawford, it had to be. "Understood. Maintain position. I'm on target." An hour passed, then movement at the compound. Three vehicles approached, not the expected two. Something was wrong. Morgan keyed her radio. Oversight, we have three vehicles approaching target. Profile matches SVBIEDs. Suicide vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. Ghost wait 1, came the tense reply. Her spotter tensed beside her. Those are heading straight for the village. If they're packed with explosives. Morgan didn't wait for command authorization. She settled her breathing, finding the respiratory pause, that perfect moment between exhale and inhale where the body becomes completely still. The crosshair settled on the driver of the lead vehicle, now 1,800 meters away. She squeezed the trigger. The .338 Norma Magnum round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. For nearly 2 seconds, the bullet traveled through the air, affected by wind gravity and the Earth's rotation. Impact. The lead vehicle swerved sharply, crashing into a ditch. The following vehicle stopped. Figures emerged, panicked. Morgan transitioned to the second driver. Breathe, pause, squeeze. 2 more shots, another hit. By the time the third driver realized what was happening, it was too late. 3 shots, 3 kills. The explosives in the vehicles never detonated. Later, back at the base, Morgan found Crawford waiting in the operations center, looking exactly as he had on her family's porch in Montana, though perhaps with more lines etched into his weathered face. That was some shooting, he said, offering her a cup of coffee. What are you doing here, Mr. Crawford? Official capacity for once. He produced credentials identifying him as a special advisor to Central Intelligence. Those weren't just any suicide bombers you stopped. That convoy was heading for a meeting of tribal leaders supporting coalition forces. Would have killed 43 people, including 3 agency assets. He paused, lowering his voice. And me, I was at that meeting. Morgan stared at him. You were the target. One of them. Crawford sipped his coffee. Your father would be proud, though he always said you were a better shot than he was by the time you turned 16. My father exaggerates. Not about this. Crawford placed a file on the table. I've been keeping tabs on your career, Morgan. Distinguished honor graduate at sniper school. Top of your class in advanced marksmanship. 17 confirmed kills in 6 months with this ODA. 18 now, she corrected. 21, actually. Those vehicles were carrying multiple targets on our priority list. He tapped the file. There's another assignment if you're interested. I go where the Army sends me. This would be outside normal channels. Joint operation. Your CO has already signed off if you agree. Morgan studied the older man's face. Why me? Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried, especially Cold War pasts. Crawford's expression grew serious. How much did David tell you about his time with Spetsnaz in Afghanistan? Enough to know he doesn't talk about it for a reason. There's a man who remembers your father very well. Former KGB, now running terrorist training camps in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region, teaching Taliban fighters Soviet Special Forces techniques. Morgan felt a chill. And you want me to find him? We want you to do what you do best, Crawford said, from very far away. FOB Chapman, Afghanistan, 2021. The briefing room fell silent as Chief Petty Officer James Reynolds of SEAL Team 6 stared incredulously at Colonel Mitchell. You want to attach an Army sniper to Neptune element for Overwatch. Reynolds' voice carried the weight of his 20 years of service. With all due respect, sir, my team works alone. We have our own snipers. Colonel Mitchell, a career special operations officer, met Reynolds' gaze evenly. This isn't a request, Chief. Staff Sergeant Hayes has specific expertise relevant to this operation. Hayes, Reynolds repeated. The female sniper. The one they call Ghost. The same. Reynolds shook his head. Sir, we're going into the most hostile territory in the Hindu Kush. This isn't the place for social experiments. The door opened and Morgan Hayes entered, followed by Master Sergeant Torres. Reynolds assessed her immediately. Petite, athletic build, carrying herself with quiet confidence. Not what he expected. Staff Sergeant Hayes reporting as ordered, sir, she said, addressing Colonel Mitchell. Mitchell nodded. Chief Reynolds was just expressing his concerns about your attachment to his team. Reynolds didn't back down. No offense, Sergeant, but my men have trained together for years. Adding an unknown, particularly one without Tier 1 selection, increases our operational risk. Morgan met his gaze without flinching. I understand your concerns, Chief, but I've reviewed your infiltration route. She moved to the map on the table. This valley creates a natural choke point. The Taliban has ambushed 2 previous patrols here in the past month. We're well aware of the terrain, Reynolds replied dismissively. Are you aware that the ambush tactics match Soviet-era Spetsnaz techniques, specialized positioning of machine guns for overlapping fields of fire, delayed secondary positions to catch reinforcements? Reynolds paused. How would you know Spetsnaz techniques? Torres stepped forward. Staff Sergeant Hayes has unique expertise in this area, Chief. Her operational record speaks for itself. He placed a folder on the table. 43 confirmed kills across Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. Longest confirmed kill at 1,800 meters. That shot saved a convoy carrying tribal leaders and CIA personnel. Reynolds glanced at the file briefly. Paper kills, he muttered, probably counting every assisted shot as hers. Colonel Mitchell's expression hardened. That's enough, Chief. Hayes's role is non-negotiable, but I'll compromise. She'll provide overwatch from a distance. Observation only. She engaged only if American lives are in immediate danger. Reynolds looked like he wanted to object further, but nodded stiffly. Understood, sir. As the meeting adjourned, Crawford appeared in the doorway, nodding to Morgan. Reynolds noticed the exchange. You know him? Reynolds asked as they exited. Family friend, Morgan replied simply. William Crawford isn't just anyone's family friend, Reynolds said. 20 years CIA operations in Russia and Eastern Europe. Deputy Director under Bush. What's your connection? Before Morgan could answer, Crawford approached. Chief Reynolds, he said, extending his hand. Been a while. Reynolds' demeanor changed subtly. Sir, didn't expect to see you in country. Just advising on some intelligence matters, Crawford said casually. I see you've met Sergeant Hayes. We were just discussing her role in tomorrow's operation, Reynolds replied. Seems like she has a powerful advocate. She has her skills like your Diana did. Crawford's words landed like a physical blow. Reynolds stiffened visibly. Diana made her choice, he said coldly, and people died because of it. Not everyone is Diana, Chief, Crawford said quietly. Sometimes the past is just the past. Reynolds turned to Morgan. 0500 tomorrow briefing room. Don't be late. He walked away without waiting for a response. What was that about? Morgan asked Crawford. The older man watched Reynolds' retreating figure. Diana was his teammate on a joint CIA SEAL operation in Chechnya, 2008. Also his fiancée. She was an agency analyst attached to his team. What happened? She made a call. Bad intelligence. Reynolds' best friend died along with 2 Russian informants. Crawford's expression was grim. Diana wasn't just any analyst. She was my daughter. Morgan felt the weight of those words. Is she dead? No, worse in Reynolds' mind. She switched sides, feeding information to the Russians. Reynolds was the one who caught her. Crawford's eyes held a pain that transcended professional betrayal. My own daughter, never saw it coming. Does he know I'm connected to you? He does now, and he'll be watching you twice as carefully because of it. Crawford placed a hand on her shoulder. Your father taught you well, Morgan, but Reynolds isn't wrong about the danger. This mission is different. Different how? The target you're hunting, Nikolai Volkov. He wasn't just any KGB officer. He and your father served together in Afghanistan, partners. The Soviet Union's most lethal sniper team. My father never mentioned him. There's a lot David never mentioned. Crawford handed her a small USB drive. Contingency protocols. Memorize them, then destroy this. And Morgan, trust your instincts out there. David always said you had the best natural talent he had ever seen. That night, Morgan prepared her equipment meticulously. Barrett M107 rifle checked and rechecked. Ammunition inspected round by round. Ghillie suit adjusted for the terrain. She would be in position 14 hours before the SEALs began their operation. As she worked, her mind drifted to her father's words years ago. A sniper must have no ego, Morgan, only purpose. Hindu Kush Mountains, 0300 an hours. The night air bit with cold as Morgan moved silently through the darkness. Her spotter, Sergeant Miller, followed 10 meters behind. They had a 7-mile hike to reach the overwatch position, all while carrying over 80 pounds of gear each. By sunrise, they were in position on a rocky outcrop with perfect visibility of the valley below. Morgan began constructing her hide a sniper's concealed position. Every movement was deliberate, economical. The area was known Taliban territory. Any mistake could be fatal. Range to primary target area, Miller asked as he set up the spotting scope. 920 meters to the compound entrance. Morgan replied without looking up from her range card. She was mapping every feature of the terrain, distances, wind indicators, potential firing positions for hostile forces. SEAL team will enter from the southwest following the dry riverbed, Miller noted, studying the terrain. Limited cover after they cross this point. Exactly where I'd set up an ambush, Morgan agreed. 3 natural firing positions with overlapping fields of fire. Classic Spetsnaz setup. Miller raised an eyebrow. You really think these Taliban fighters are using Soviet tactics? Someone's teaching them and doing it well. She adjusted her scope minutely. We'll know soon enough. Hours passed in silence. The temperature rose as the sun climbed higher. Morgan remained motionless, conserving energy, controlling her breathing. Through her scope, she observed the village below. Something felt wrong. Miller, she whispered. The village. Where are the people? He shifted his spotting scope. I count 3. Old man by the well woman hanging laundry child with goats. A village this size should have 30 minimum. Where are they? Could have fled, could be hiding. Or they were warned, Morgan concluded. Check the northern ridge. Look for unusual shadow patterns or vegetation disruption. As Miller redirected his scope, Morgan keyed her radio. Oversight, this is Ghost. Possible pre-evacuation of civilians from target area. Recommend delayed insertion until we verify. Colonel Mitchell's voice came back immediately. Negative, Ghost. Neptune is already en route. Maintain overwatch, report any hostile movement. Roger, Oversight, but I'm seeing indicators consistent with pre-planned ambush. Request permission to shift to counter-sniper protocol. A pause. Granted, Ghost, but weapons tight and less American lives at immediate risk. Clear. Crystal, sir. Morgan adjusted her position, slightly widening her field of view. Miller, I need eyes on the eastern approach in that ridgeline. On it. The radio crackled again. Ghost, Neptune actual. We're 5 mics out from insertion point. Status report. Reynolds. Morgan recognized the SEAL commander's voice. Neptune actual, Ghost. Village appears evacuated. Possible hostile forces on northern ridge. Recommend alternative approach via Sector 4. Negative, Ghost, Reynolds replied tersely. We're proceeding as planned. Maintain radio discipline. Out. Miller gave her a sidelong glance. He doesn't trust your assessment. No, Morgan agreed. He doesn't trust me. Through her scope, she watched as SEAL Team 6's Neptune element appeared at the mouth of the valley. 8 operators moving with practiced precision weapons at the ready. They were heading directly toward the choke point she had identified. Morgan felt her heartbeat quicken, but maintained her breathing discipline. Come on, Reynolds, she whispered. Seize the trap. The SEALs continued forward, unaware of the danger Morgan sensed. As they approached an abandoned Soviet-era BTR-60 armored personnel carrier that lay rusting in the middle of the valley, she noticed a subtle movement on the northern ridge. Contact northern ridge, she said sharply. 3 o'clock behind the rock formation. Miller confirmed. I see it. PKM machine gun being set up. Morgan keyed her radio. Neptune actual, Ghost. Confirmed hostile force setting up heavy weapon on your 3 o'clock range 700 meters from your position. No response. Neptune actual, do you copy? Still nothing. Comms might be jammed, Miller suggested. Morgan made a decision. Shifting to counter-sniper position. Cover me. She moved 10 meters to her right using the natural rock formation for concealment. From this new angle, she had a clear line of sight to the northern ridge. More movement caught her eye, not just 1 machine gun, but 3 being positioned for interlocking fields of fire. Oversight, Ghost. Multiple hostile positions establishing. Neptune is walking into a prepared ambush. No radio contact. Request permission to engage. Colonel Mitchell's response was immediate. Negative, Ghost. Hold position. QRF is spinning up. The quick reaction force would take at least 20 minutes to arrive. By then it would be too late. Below, the SEALs approached the choke point. Reynolds in the lead suddenly raised his fist, signaling halt. He'd spotted something. The team took defensive positions behind the rusted BTR. For a moment, Morgan thought they had avoided the trap. Then she saw it. A fighter with an RPG moving into position on the eastern slope. The SEALs couldn't see him from their angle. Oversight hostile with RPG targeting Neptune element. No shot for Neptune. He's going to hit that BTR they're using for cover. Ghost weapons tight, Mitchell ordered. QRF ETA 17 minutes. 17 minutes. The SEALs would be dead in 17 seconds once that ambush was sprung. Morgan thought of her father's words. A sniper must have no ego, only purpose. Her purpose was clear. 8 Americans were about to die because someone couldn't see past their assumptions about her. She'd been ordered to observe only, but her ROE allowed engagement in defense of U.S. forces facing imminent threat. Through her reticle, she watched the Taliban fighter with the RPG moving into position. 20 seconds until he had a clear shot at the BTR. She made her decision. Court-martial was better than 8 folded flags. Miller spotting. Target RPG gunner, Eastern Slope range 940. Wind 5 knots left to right. Miller, to his credit, didn't hesitate. Confirmed RPG gunner Wine holding steady at 5 knots. Temperature correction +1. Send it when ready. Morgan found her respiratory pause, that perfect moment between exhale and inhale. 4 pounds of pressure on the trigger was all that separated those SEALs from coming home. The Barrett M107 roared the 50 BMG round traveling downrange at 800 feet per second. Despite the suppressor, the shot echoed off the valley walls. 1.2 seconds later, the round impacted the fighter's chest. He dropped instantly, the RPG clattering away. No time for confirmation. She was already acquiring her next target, a PKM gunner on the northern ridge 920 meters out. Adjust windage. Send it. Hit. Third target, 870 meters. Minimal wind adjustment needed. Hit. The radio exploded with confusion. Reynolds' voice, who's engaging? Identify yourself. She didn't respond. 3 more fighters were maneuvering to flank the SEAL's position from the east. She transitioned targets smoothly, mechanically. Each trigger squeeze was calculated perfection. 6 shots, 6 kills, 11 seconds. She swapped magazines quickly, but more fighters were pouring from a compound 400 meters north of the SEALs. She counted at least 15 moving in coordinated fashion. These weren't farmers with AKs, these were trained fighters. Neptune element Ghost, 15 enemy fighters approaching from Grid 42 SUV 834567. Recommend immediate displacement south for exfil, over. Reynolds' transmission cut off as an RPG impacted just meters from the BTR. Through her scope, she saw him thrown backward, his helmet gone, blood streaming from a head wound. With Reynolds down, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Williams took tactical command. Unlike his chief, he had no pride to protect. Ghost Neptune 2 taking command. We have 3 urgent surgical casualties, 2 priority. Cannot move without suppression. Can you provide, over? Neptune 2 Ghost. Roger. Engaging. Over. Morgan entered the zone, that state where thought ceased and training became instinct. She worked the bolt of her Barrett like a machine, sending precision fire into the advancing fighters. Distance no longer mattered. Wind became intuitive. She wasn't thinking. She was simply executing. 800 meters. Fighter with PKM behind rock formation. Elevation plus 2.8 mils. Wind hold 1.8 mils left. Send it. Hit. 750 meters. 2 fighters with AKs advancing through the wadi. 2 shots, 3 seconds apart, both down. The Taliban fighters realized they had a sniper problem. They began seeking cover, but Morgan had mapped every piece of concealment in that valley during her 14-hour wait. She knew which rocks could be shot, under which walls her 50 caliber rounds could penetrate. A fighter dove behind a mud wall. She put 2 rounds through it. The second one found him. Another tried using a shallow drainage ditch for cover. She'd marked that spot on her range card hours ago, an angled rock face perfect for a deliberate skip shot. She sent 1 round knowing the ricochet would arc straight into the shallow ditch. Neptune 2 Ghost. Keep moving. I've got overwatch. Over. In 4 minutes, she engaged 23 targets with 26 rounds, reloading twice between bursts. 21 confirmed kills, 2 probable. Then she noticed something. A glint of light from a position 1,000 meters to her west. Another sniper. Miller, we've got a counter sniper. West Ridge, 1,100 meters. Before Miller could respond, dirt kicked up inches from Morgan's position. The shot report followed a second later. Down, she hissed, rolling to her right as another round impacted where she had just been. This wasn't an ordinary Taliban fighter. The precision, the positioning, this was professional, and they had just made this personal. Miller maintained overwatch on Neptune. I'll handle the sniper. That's not the plan, Hayes. Plans change. She grabbed her spare rifle, the lighter, more maneuverable Emerad chambered in .338 Norma Magnum, and began moving laterally along the ridge. Another shot kicked up dirt near Miller. Go, he urged. I'll cover Neptune's exfil. Morgan moved quickly but carefully, using the terrain for concealment. Whoever this opposing sniper was, they were good, very good, and they seemed more interested in her than the SEALs. As she set up in her new position, Morgan caught movement, just a shadow really on the western ridge. She settled her breathing, focusing the scope on the area. Nothing, then something. A barrel's edge protruding from behind a rock formation, patiently waiting. This sniper knew the game was trying to draw her out. Morgan remained motionless. Two could play at patience. Minutes passed. In the valley below, the remaining Taliban fighters were retreating, their coordinated attack broken by her precision fire. The SEALs were moving their wounded toward the extraction point where the Kasevac helicopters would arrive. The opposing sniper fired again, not at her, but at the retreating SEALs. The round kicked up dust meters from Williams as he helped carry a wounded teammate. Morgan had her shot as the other sniper fired. Their position was momentarily exposed. She squeezed her trigger. The round traveled downrange, but she knew immediately it would miss. The opposing sniper had already moved, anticipating her shot. Ghost Neptune 2, Kasevac birds, 5 mics out. We're at the LZ, but still taking sporadic fire. Can you suppress? Working on it, Neptune 2, she replied, scanning for any sign of the mysterious sniper. Another shot rang out, this one passing so close to Morgan that she felt the air displacement. This was no ordinary marksman. This was someone who understood the dance of snipers intimately. She caught a glimpse of movement, the sniper repositioning. Something about the movement patterns seemed familiar, like a technique she'd seen before. Before, not in combat, but in training. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The movements, the positioning, the tactics, they matched what her father had taught her. Soviet Spetsnaz sniper techniques. This wasn't just any counter-sniper. This had to be Volkov. Nikolai Volkov, her father's former partner, the man Crawford had warned her about. As if confirming her thoughts, her radio crackled with an unfamiliar voice speaking accented English. The daughter of David Hayes. Yes, I would recognize that shooting anywhere. Your father taught you well. Morgan froze. How had he accessed their frequency? Ghosts do not respond to unknown transmissions, came Colonel Mitchell's urgent voice. Kasevac is 2 minutes out. The unknown voice continued. Tell William Crawford that old debts remain unpaid. This game has just begun. In the valley below the Kasevac, helicopters appeared, banking sharply as they approached the landing zone. The SEALs moved their wounded aboard quickly, professional, even under fire. Morgan maintained her focus, scanning for any threat to the extraction. As the helicopters lifted off, she allowed herself a moment of relief. The mission was a disaster, but at least the SEALs were coming home alive. Her radio crackled once more with Mitchell's voice. Ghost extract to secondary LZ. QRF will meet you there. Roger, oversight, she replied. Moving now. As she gathered her equipment, Morgan knew this was far from over. Volkov was out there watching. A ghost from her father's past had just become very real. And as the daughter of David Hayes, she would have to face him. Back at Chapman, the debriefing room was tense. Colonel Mitchell paced as Morgan gave her report. 21 confirmed kills, 2 probable. The opposing sniper escaped after the Kasevac birds departed. And you believe this was Nikolai Volkov, Mitchell asked, based on the tactics, precision, and radio communication? Yes, sir. Mitchell nodded grimly. Chief Reynolds is in surgery. Shrapnel to the head, but the doctors are optimistic. The rest of Neptune element suffered 3 wounded, no KIA, thanks to your intervention. He paused, fixing her with a steady gaze. You disobeyed a direct order, Staff Sergeant. Yes, sir, I did. 8 men are alive because of it. Mitchell shook his head. I'm recommending you for a Silver Star, but there will still be questions. Breaking ROE, even to save lives, comes with consequences. The door opened and William Crawford entered, looking grim. Those consequences will have to wait, Colonel. We have a bigger problem. He placed a satellite image on the table. This was taken 30 minutes after the engagement. Volkov meeting with a figure we've identified as Haqqani network leadership. Morgan studied the image. He's working with them directly. Worse, Crawford said. Based on signals intelligence, we believe he's training an elite group of snipers using Soviet-era techniques. And after today, you're their primary target. Mitchell frowned. Why Sergeant Hayes specifically? Because of who her father is, Crawford replied. David Hayes wasn't just any Spetsnaz operative. He and Volkov were the Soviet Union's most lethal sniper team in Afghanistan. 53 confirmed kills between them. Until my father defected, Morgan added, the pieces finally falling into place. Not just defected, Crawford corrected. He brought with him the names of every KGB operative embedded with the Mujahideen, the intelligence coup of the late Cold War. And Volkov never forgave him, Morgan concluded. Volkov was arrested, suspected of being complicit, spent 5 years in a Russian prison before being cleared. By then the Soviet Union was gone and so was his career. Crawford's expression was grave. Now he's back and using you to send a message to your father. Where's my father now? Morgan asked, sudden concern in her voice. Safe, Crawford assured her. We moved him to a secure location as soon as we confirmed Volkov's identity. Colonel Mitchell interrupted. This changes the mission parameters. Staff Sergeant Hayes, you're being temporarily reassigned to a joint CIA JSOC task force. Objective: locate and neutralize Nikolai Volkov. Sir, Morgan began. The Neptune element will be operating under new leadership while Reynolds recovers, Mitchell finished. Petty Officer Williams has specifically requested you remain as Overwatch for their next operation. This surprised her. Even after I disobeyed orders, Mitchell said with a hint of a smile. His exact words were, I don't care if she follows orders as long as she keeps shooting like that. As the briefing concluded, Morgan found herself alone with Crawford. You knew this would happen, she accused quietly. You knew Volkov would be there. I suspected, Crawford admitted, but I didn't know he'd directly target you. That changes everything. Why didn't you tell me the full truth about my father? Crawford sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. Because David asked me not to. He wanted you to choose your own path, not follow in his footsteps because of who he was. And now you're in Volkov's crosshairs, whether you know the truth or not. Crawford placed a hand on her shoulder. Your father was more than just a sniper, Morgan. He was a hero who saved countless lives by bringing those KGB names to us. But that made powerful enemies. Enemies I've now inherited, she concluded. Yes, but you've also inherited his skill. Crawford's expression softened. I was there the day he defected. Know what the first thing he asked for was? Not asylum, not protection. He asked for a phone call to check on his 4-year-old daughter back in Belarus. That was David's priority, always. Morgan absorbed this, a new understanding of her father taking shape. What now? Now, Crawford said, we prepare. Because Volkov won't stop until he completes what he sees as justice. And neither will we. As Morgan left the briefing room, she passed the medical bay where Reynolds was recovering. Through the window, she saw him conscious, head bandaged. Their eyes met briefly. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't forgiveness or even acceptance, but it was acknowledgement. For now, that would have to be enough. Because the ghost of her father's past had emerged from the shadows and the hunt had only just begun. The rising sun painted the mountains in hues of amber and gold, but Staff Sergeant Morgan Hayes took no pleasure in the view. From her new observation post overlooking the valley, she scanned the terrain methodically through her spotting scope. Somewhere out there, Nikolai Volkov was watching, waiting. The hunter had become the hunted. 3 days had passed since the ambush. 3 days of planning preparation and the quiet tension that precedes decisive action. The Taliban fighters had retreated deeper into the mountains, but intelligence suggested they were regrouping. The mission parameters had changed, but the objective remained: neutralize the threat. Morgan shifted slightly, easing the stiffness in her muscles. Her radio crackled to life. Ghost, this is Neptune 2. Radio check over. Neptune 2 Ghost. Lima Charlie. Over. Clear transmission. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Williams had assumed temporary command of Neptune element while Reynolds recovered. Unlike his predecessor, Williams harbored no prejudice about working with a female Army sniper. 21 confirmed kills had earned her that much respect. Ghost, be advised, mission is a go. Neptune element moving to infill point at 0930 hours. Confirm Overwatch position established. Neptune 2 Ghost. Overwatch established. I have eyes on objective in all approach routes. Standing by. Morgan rechecked her Barrett M107, then glanced at her spotter Sergeant Miller, who was monitoring the western approaches through his spotting scope. Still think this is a trap? Miller asked without looking up. Everything about this feels like a trap, Morgan replied. Volkov isn't just another target. He trained my father and my father trained me, so it's personal. For him, maybe. For me, it's just the mission. But that wasn't entirely true. Since learning the full story about her father's past, Morgan had found herself reassessing everything she thought she knew about David Hayes. The quiet shooting instructor from Montana had once been among the Soviet Union's most lethal operatives, a man so valuable that the CIA had orchestrated his defection during the collapse of the USSR. Her radio crackled again, this time on the secure channel. Ghost Oversight Actual, Crawford's voice transmitting on encrypted channel 7. Morgan switched frequencies. Oversight Actual Ghost. Go ahead. New intelligence Ghost. Satellite thermal picked up multiple heat signatures at the target compound. More than our initial assessment. And something else, custom electronic countermeasures detected. Soviet designed but modernized. Volkov, Morgan said. It wasn't a question. Almost certainly, he's expecting us, Ghost. This isn't just an ambush, it's an invitation. Morgan processed this. An invitation to what? To finish what started 30 years ago. Crawford's voice took on a somber quality. I've spoken with your father. He's en route to Bagram Air Base now. But why would you bring him into this? I didn't. David insisted. Said there are things about Volkov only he knows. Weaknesses, tendencies, things that could keep you alive. Morgan felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Her father had always kept his military past separate from their life in Montana. Now those worlds were colliding. Neptune's timeline remains unchanged, Crawford continued, but I'm authorizing you to adjust your Overwatch position based on this new intel. If this is Volkov's game, change the rules. Understood. Ghost out. Morgan turned to Miller. Change of plans. We're repositioning. Miller raised an eyebrow. Colonel Mitchell's orders were to maintain this Overwatch position. New intelligence. Multiple hostile signatures at the objective. We need elevation and angle to cover Neptune's approach through the eastern ravine. That puts us closer to the action. Nearly 600 meters closer. It also puts us where Volkov won't expect us. Morgan was already packing her gear. He trained my father. He knows standard operating procedure for Overwatch positions. We need to think differently. If you say so. Miller didn't sound convinced, but began gathering his equipment. As they moved through the rugged terrain, Morgan reflected on her conversation with Reynolds the previous evening. The SEAL commander had requested to see her from his hospital bed at the FO medical unit. Reynolds' head was still bandaged, his face pale but his eyes alert. He gestured for her to sit in the chair beside his bed. They tell me you saved my team, he'd said, without preamble. I did my job, Chief. Your job was observation only. You disobeyed a direct order. Morgan had met his gaze evenly. Yes, sir, I did. Reynolds had studied her for a long moment. Williams says you took down 21 tangos in less than 5 minutes. Says you made shots no one on his team could have made. I had good positioning. You had skill. Reynolds had shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. Why didn't you tell me about your connection to Volkov? I didn't know about it until after the ambush. But you knew Crawford, knew about his daughter. Morgan had nodded. Crawford's been a family friend since I was a child, but I didn't know about Diana until recently. Reynolds' jaw had tightened at the mention of the name. Diana was brilliant, best tactical mind I'd ever seen. I trusted her completely. His voice had grown quiet. We were going to be married after that deployment. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was my mistake. I let personal feelings cloud professional judgment. He'd fixed her with an intense stare. A mistake I won't make again, which is why I need to know. Can I trust you, Hayes? With your life, Chief, and the lives of your men. Reynolds had nodded slowly. Williams requested you for Overwatch on the follow-up mission. I approved it, but understand this. If you're playing some game connected to Crawford or your father or this Russian, I'll put you down myself. No games, Chief, just the mission. The mission, Reynolds had repeated. Find Volkov and end this before he kills more of our people. Now as Morgan and Miller established their new overwatch position, a precarious outcropping with a commanding view of the valley, she reflected on Reynolds' warning. The chief's suspicion wasn't entirely unwarranted. The connections between Crawford, her father, and Volkov created a web of relationships that transcended simple military objectives. Neptune 2 Ghost. New overwatch position established. I have eyes on your infill route and the objective. Be advised, multiple heat signatures detected at target compound. Ghost Neptune 2 copy all. Proceeding with caution, ETA to objective 20 mics. Morgan settled behind her rifle, studying the terrain through her scope. The target compound was an abandoned Soviet-era outpost repurposed by the Taliban. Its strategic position overlooking three valleys made it an ideal location for both defense and coordinating attacks on coalition forces. Movement eastern perimeter, Miller reported, observing through his spotting scope. Two tangos armed with AKs, standard patrol pattern. Morgan shifted her scope to verify. Confirmed, but look at their movement. Too disciplined for typical Taliban. These guys have proper military training. Volkov's work most likely. Keep scanning the high ground. If he's here, he'll have established his own overwatch position. Miller adjusted his scope. Nothing yet on the ridgelines. Wait possible movement northwest slope, approximately 1,500 meters from our position. Morgan swung her scope to the indicated area. Nothing obvious, but a slight shadow that didn't match the surrounding terrain caught her attention. Good eye, that's not natural cover. She keyed her radio. Neptune 2 Ghost, possible hostile sniper northwest ridge. Grid coordinates 42 SUV 835571. Proceed with caution on your approach. Ghost Neptune 2, copy. We're 5 mics from the ravine entrance. Still out of visual range of the objective. Morgan continued her scan methodically, covering each sector. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, an instinctual warning her father had taught her never to ignore. Miller, I don't like this. It's too quiet. Where are the rest of the heat signatures Crawford mentioned? Before Miller could respond, the radio crackled. A new voice, heavily accented but clear. The daughter of David Hayes, always so thorough, just like her father. Morgan froze. Volkov had accessed their frequency again. Ghost Neptune 2. Who is that on this channel? We're compromised. Volkov continued, his voice almost conversational. Tell Neptune Element they are not my concern today. This is between old friends. Isn't that right, Morgan Davidovna? The use of the Russian patronymic Davidovna, daughter of David, was deliberate, but it made no sense. Her father's name was David. Your father never told you, Volkov's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Of course not. David Hayes kept many secrets. Ask William Crawford about Operation Black Snow. Ask him about Grozny D4. The radio went silent. Morgan keyed her transmitter. Neptune 2, fallback to Rally Point Charlie. Repeat fallback. Communications compromised. Ghost Neptune 2 negative. We're continuing to objective. Switching to alternate frequency. Neptune 2 out. Damn it, Williams, Morgan muttered. She turned to Miller. Something's wrong. Volkov is playing games, but why? And how does he know these frequencies? Miller's expression was grim. Maybe we have a leak. Or maybe he's better connected than we thought. Morgan scanned the valley again, a sense of foreboding growing. Keep eyes on Neptune's approach. I need to make a call. She switched to the secure satellite channel. Oversight actual Ghost. Priority communication. Crawford's voice came back immediately. Go ahead, Ghost. Volkov just contacted us on our primary frequency. Mentioned Operation Black Snow and Grozny 994. What is he talking about? A long pause. Where did you hear those names? From Volkov himself. He called me Morgan Davidovna. Why would he use that patronymic? Another pause, longer this time. Go to encryption protocol Sarah. Authentication code Winter Bear. Morgan complied, inputting the complex encryption sequence. When the connection re-established, Crawford's voice was tight with tension. Listen carefully. Operation Black Snow was a joint CIA Spetsnaz mission during the final days of the Soviet Union. Highly classified. Your father was involved, as was Volkov, as was I. Joint mission with the Soviets. The Cold War wasn't always cold, Morgan. Sometimes we work together against common threats. In this case, a rogue KGB faction selling nuclear material. Your father and Volkov were our shooters. What does this have to do with Grozny? Everything. Crawford's voice was heavy. The mission went bad. People died who shouldn't have. Afterward, your father made the decision to defect, bringing critical intelligence with him. And Volkov felt betrayed, Morgan concluded. It's more complicated than that. Crawford hesitated. Morgan, there are aspects of the situation that remain classified even now, but you need to know Volkov and your father were more than just teammates. They were brothers in arms in the truest sense. The betrayal was personal. A sudden realization struck Morgan. He called me Davidovna. Is Volkov my... No, Crawford cut her off. But he and your father took a blood oath during their time in Afghanistan. In Russian Special Forces tradition, this made them brothers. In some ways, Volkov considered himself your uncle. Morgan tried to process this information, but there was no time. Miller was urgently signaling her. I have to go. Neptune is approaching the objective. Ghost out. She rejoined Miller at the observation position. What do you have? Neptune just entered the ravine, but I'm seeing movement at the compound. Tango's taking defensive positions. They know our guys are coming. Morgan swung her scope toward the ravine. The 8-man SEAL team was moving carefully through the narrow passage, unaware of the reception waiting for them. Neptune 2 Ghost. Be advised, hostiles are setting up defensive positions. They know you're coming. Recommend immediate abort. No response. They had already switched to the alternate frequency. Damn it! Morgan made a split-second decision. Miller laser designate the primary target building. I'm going to create a diversion. Miller looked at her in shock. That's not the mission. The mission is to protect Neptune and neutralize the threat. That's exactly what I'm doing. She adjusted her scope, centering on a fuel depot near the compound's main building. Designate the target, Sergeant. That's an order. Miller complied, activating the infrared laser designator. Morgan lined up her shot. The Barrett M107 was loaded with Raufoss M211 multi-purpose ammunition, specialized rounds containing an explosive charge. She squeezed the trigger. The 50 caliber round traveled the 920 meters to target in just over a second. When it struck the fuel depot, the result was spectacular. A massive explosion engulfed the northern section of the compound in flames. Chaos erupted. Taliban fighters scattered, their attention diverted from the approaching SEAL team. Neptune 2 Ghost, target compound compromised. You have a window. Suggest immediate exploitation or withdrawal. This time, Williams responded on the primary frequency. Ghost Neptune 2 moving to exploit. Thanks for the fireworks. Morgan allowed herself a momentary smile before refocusing. Multiple tangos moving to secondary positions. Eastern Wall 3 fighters with ARPs. She engaged the RPG team methodically. 3 shots, 3 kills. The distinctive crack of her 50 caliber rifle echoed across the valley. Keep scanning the ridge lines, she instructed Miller. Volkov will use this chaos to his advantage. Miller nodded, his expression focused, as he systematically searched the surrounding high ground. Nothing yet on the wait. Movement north ridge, 2 o'clock from the compound. Morgan shifted her scope. A lone figure was moving with purpose, away from the firefight below, heading deeper into the mountains. I see him, range approximately 1,600 meters, moving fast. Too far for a reliable shot with current conditions. Morgan keyed her radio. Neptune 2 Ghost. High-value target possibly identified, moving north from the objective. Grid coordinate 42 SUV 837576. Ghost Neptune 2. We're engaged at the objective. Multiple hostiles. Cannot pursue at this time. Morgan made another split-second decision. Neptune 2 Ghost. I'm moving to pursue HVT. Miller will maintain overwatch for your team. Ghost, that's negative. Maintain your position. Morgan was already packing her essential gear. Miller maintained communication with Neptune. Direct them to the weapons cache on the southern side of the compound. Satellite imagery showed heavy activity there yesterday. Hayes, this is outside the mission parameters, Miller protested. The mission is to find Volkov. That's what I'm doing. Alone, that's suicide. Morgan shouldered her pack, switching to her lighter MRAD rifle. Sometimes you have to break protocol to complete the mission. She allowed herself a grim smile. Besides, I'm a ghost. Being invisible is what I do best. Before Miller could protest further, Morgan was moving, descending the rocky slope with practiced efficiency, making her way toward the last known position of the fleeing figure. The pursuit led Morgan deep into the mountains. The terrain was treacherous, narrow paths along steep drops, loose scree that threatened to give way underfoot, and the ever-present danger of ambush. But she had been trained for this. Her father's lessons on mountain movement, combined with the Army's advanced training, made her nearly as sure-footed as the local tribesmen who had navigated these passes for generations. 2 hours into the pursuit, she paused to check her bearings. The trail had led her to a box canyon, steep walls on three sides, with the path she had followed providing the only obvious entrance or exit. It was a perfect place for an ambush, which meant it almost certainly was one. Morgan studied the canyon walls through her binoculars. Nothing obvious, but the terrain offered countless hiding places. She keyed her satellite radio. Oversight Ghost. Position update grid 42 SUV 841582. Pursuing possible HVT into restrictive terrain. Request ISR support. The response came back garbled, the mountain walls interfering with the signal. She caught only fragments. Satellite repositioning, 30 minutes. Proceed with caution. 30 minutes until she could get eyes in the sky. Morgan weighed her options. Continue into the obvious trap retreat or find another way. She studied the canyon walls again, this time looking for an alternative route. The western wall appeared less sheer than the others, with enough irregularities to potentially allow climbing. It would be dangerous, a fall from that height would be fatal, but it would give her the high ground and potentially allow her to outflank whoever waited in the canyon. Decision made, Morgan secured her rifle across her back and began the ascent. Each handhold was tested before committing her weight, each foothold carefully selected. 20 minutes of grueling climbing brought her to a narrow ledge that ran along the canyon wall, providing a concealed path forward. From this new vantage point, she could see into the canyon below. It appeared empty at first glance, but her trained eye detected the subtle signs of human presence. A recently disturbed rock, vegetation crushed in a pattern inconsistent with animal movement, the faintest trace of cigarette smoke lingering in the still air. Someone was down there, waiting. Morgan continued along the ledge, moving silently despite the treacherous footing. The path took her deeper into the canyon, eventually opening onto a small plateau that overlooked a hidden grotto. What she saw there stopped her cold. In the grotto below, partially concealed by an overhang, was a small encampment, not Taliban, too organized, too modern. A single tent camouflaged to blend with the surroundings. A compact satellite communication system, and weapons precision, weapons including what appeared to be a custom sniper rifle leaning against a rock. Volkov's hideout. Morgan carefully unslung her rifle, setting up a shooting position on the plateau. Through her scope, she examined the encampment in detail. No sign of movement. Either Volkov was inside the tent, or this was yet another layer of the trap. Her radio crackled suddenly, making her flinch. Ghost oversight. ISR online. Scanning your coordinates. Morgan kept her voice low. Oversight Ghost. I've located what appears to be HVT's forward operating base. No visual on the target. Awaiting instructions. Ghost hold position. QRF is spinning up. ETA to your location 40 minutes. 40 minutes. A lot could happen in that time. A voice called out from below, speaking in Russian. You can come down, Morgan Davidovna. I have been expecting you. Volkov. He was in the tent. Your climbing skills are impressive, he continued, still in Russian. David taught you well, but you should have checked the eastern approach more carefully. I spotted you 20 minutes ago. Morgan remained silent, keeping her rifle trained on the tent entrance. Not going to respond. Perhaps you don't speak your father's language. A pity. He was always proud of his heritage, even after he betrayed it. The tent flap moved. Morgan tightened her finger on the trigger. I'm coming out unarmed. We have much to discuss before your friends arrive. Slowly, deliberately, a man emerged from the tent. Tall, powerfully built despite his age, with silver hair, cut military short, and a neatly trimmed beard. He wore modern tactical clothing, but moved with the assured confidence of a man who had survived countless combat situations. Nikolai Volkov raised his empty hands, looking directly at Morgan's position, though she was certain she remained concealed. You have your mother's eyes, he said in English now. But everything else, the way you move, the way you shoot, that is pure David. Morgan kept her scope centered on his chest. One squeeze of the trigger would end this, complete the mission. You won't shoot, Volkov said confidently. Not until you hear what I have to say. You have questions about your father, about me, about why I called you Davidovna. Start talking, Morgan replied, breaking her silence. Volkov smiled slightly. So you do speak Russian. Good. Your father would be pleased. My father is an American citizen. Your father is Spetsnaz. That never changes no matter what passport he carries. Volkov gestured to a camp stool near the fire pit. May I sit? My old wounds make standing uncomfortable. Morgan didn't respond, which Volkov took as permission. He sat, his movements betraying the stiffness of old injuries. You know about Operation Black Snow, he began, but not the whole truth. Not what really happened in Grozny. I know you and my father were partners, that you felt betrayed when he defected. Volkov laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Is that what Crawford told you, that I felt betrayed? The man still deals in half-truths, I see. Then tell me the whole truth. Your father and I were more than partners. We were brothers in every way but blood. We fought together in Afghanistan, Chechnya, a dozen other places the world has forgotten. We saved each other's lives more times than I can count. Volkov's gaze grew distant. Operation Black Snow was supposed to be straightforward, a joint mission with the Americans with Crawford to stop a rogue KGB faction selling nuclear material. Your father and I were the shooters. Crawford was the handler. What went wrong? Everything. Volkov's voice hardened. The intelligence was flawed. The extraction plan failed. We found ourselves surrounded in Grozny, fighting for our lives. Your father was wounded. I got him out to the extraction point where Crawford was waiting. He paused, his expression darkening. But there was a complication. Something none of us expected. Your mother. Morgan felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her. My mother, she died when I was 12, in Montana. Volkov shook his head slowly. The woman who raised you in Montana was not your birth mother, Morgan. Your real mother was Elena Orlova, a KGB operative assigned to monitor Crawford. She was pregnant with you when everything fell apart in Grozny. You're lying. But even as she said it, Morgan felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. It would explain so much, her father's reluctance to discuss her early childhood. The absence of baby pictures before age 4. Crawford's continued presence in their lives. I have no reason to lie. Not anymore. Volkov reached slowly into his pocket, producing a worn photograph. He held it up so she could see it through her scope. This was taken 2 weeks before Grozny. The photo showed 3 people, a younger David Hayes Volkov, and between them a striking woman with dark hair and eyes startlingly similar to Morgan's own. Elena was 8 months pregnant when the mission went bad, Volkov continued. When we reached the extraction point, Crawford had a difficult choice. The helicopter could only take 2 people. Your father was wounded. Elena was pregnant. And you were left behind, Morgan concluded. Volkov nodded. I told him to go. Family comes first. That was always our code. I thought I could make it out on my own. His face hardened. I didn't count on Crawford's betrayal. What betrayal? The Americans needed a scapegoat, someone to blame for the mission's failure. Crawford reported that I had compromised the operation, sold information to the very people we were targeting. It wasn't true, but it served the CIA's purposes. I spent 5 years in a Russian prison while David built a new life in America with you and Elena. Morgan struggled to reconcile this with everything she had believed about her life. If what you're saying is true, then why is my father still alive? Why didn't you take revenge when you got out? Because of the promise I made to Elena. Volkov's voice softened. Before they left on the helicopter, she made me swear to protect her family no matter what happened. Even after I learned of Crawford's betrayal, I kept that promise. Then why now? Why target American forces? Why come after me? I'm not targeting Americans, Morgan. I'm eliminating a threat that has reemerged after all these years. Volkov leaned forward. The same rogue faction we were hunting in 1994 has reconstituted. They're operating in this region using the Taliban as cover, and they're still selling the same dangerous materials. And you expect me to believe you're here as some kind of lone vigilante? I expect you to verify everything I've told you. Ask your father about Elena Orlova. Ask Crawford about the real reason Operation Black Snow failed. Volkov stood slowly. Then decide for yourself what the truth is. The distant sound of helicopter rotors cut through the mountain air. The quick reaction force was approaching. Your friends are coming, Volkov observed, which means our time is up. But remember this, Morgan Davidovna. If I had wanted to kill you or your SEAL friends, I could have done so many times over. Ask yourself why I didn't. He turned, walking calmly back toward his tent. Stop, Morgan called out. You're not going anywhere except back to base with me. Volkov paused, looking over his shoulder with a sad smile. We both know that's not going to happen. Check your 3 o'clock. Morgan risked a quick glance to her right. On a ridge approximately 800 meters away, she saw the unmistakable silhouette of a sniper team. 2 figures, one with a rifle trained in her direction. Insurance policy, Volkov explained. They won't fire unless I give the signal, or unless you try to stop me. He continued toward his tent. We'll meet again, Morgan, when you're ready to hear the rest of the story. The helicopter sounds grew louder. Morgan faced an impossible choice: attempt to capture Volkov and risk being shot by his backup, or let him go and face the consequences of failing the mission. In the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. She keyed her radio. Oversight Ghost. HVT is escaping. I am in a compromised position with hostile sniper team on my 3 o'clock. Unable to pursue. Ghost Oversight. Hold position. QRF ETA 3 minutes. By the time the helicopters arrived, Volkov was gone, vanished into the network of caves that honeycombed the mountain. He left behind nothing but questions and a single worn photograph that he had intentionally left for Morgan. The debriefing at FOB Chapman was tense. Colonel Mitchell paced the room as Morgan recounted her encounter with Volkov, omitting only the most personal details about her mother. Let me get this straight, Mitchell said when she finished. You abandoned your Overwatch position, pursued a high-value target alone, and then let him escape. I made a tactical decision based on the circumstances, sir. A decision that could have gotten you killed, or worse, captured. Mitchell shook his head, and now Volkov is in the wind again. With respect, sir, he was never contained to begin with. He's been playing us from the start. The door opened and Crawford entered, his expression grave. Behind him came a man Morgan hadn't expected to see: her father. David Hayes looked older than when she had last seen him 3 months ago. His face was lined with fatigue, his eyes shadowed. But when he saw Morgan, his expression brightened. Morgan, he said, crossing the room to embrace her. You're safe. I'm fine, Dad. She returned the embrace briefly before stepping back, studying his face. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. David's accent, usually barely noticeable after 30 years in America, was more pronounced under stress. When William told me about Volkov, I knew I had to be here. Morgan glanced at Crawford, whose expression remained carefully neutral. We have a lot to talk about. Indeed we do, Crawford agreed. But first we need to address the immediate situation. Colonel Mitchell, may we use your office? This debriefing requires privacy. Mitchell nodded reluctantly. Make it quick. I have a team in the field that needs guidance. The 4 of them relocated to Mitchell's office. Once the door was closed, Morgan placed Volkov's photograph on the desk. He left this for me, she said simply. David picked up the photo, his expression softening. Elena, he whispered. So it's true, Morgan said. The woman in Montana wasn't my mother. David looked at his daughter, pain evident in his eyes. Anna loved you as her own. In every way that matters, she was your mother. But not by birth. Morgan turned to Crawford. Volkov said you betrayed him, used him as a scapegoat for the failed operation in Grozny. Crawford sighed heavily. It's more complicated than that. It always is with you. Morgan struggled to keep her voice even. Tell me the truth, all of it. David placed a hand on her arm. Morgan, you have to understand the times. The Soviet Union had collapsed. Everything was chaos. Old enemies were suddenly supposed to be friends. Nothing was simple. Operation Black Snow was a joint CIA-KGB mission, Crawford explained. One of the first. Its failure threatened the entire post-Cold War relationship. Someone had to take the blame. So you sacrificed Volkov, Morgan concluded. It wasn't my decision alone, Crawford defended. But yes, Volkov was designated as the compromised agent. It protected the larger relationship between our intelligence services. It gave your father and mother a chance at a new life. And it condemned an innocent man to prison. He wasn't innocent, David interjected. None of us were. We all had blood on our hands from years of playing the great game. Morgan looked at her father. Did you know what Crawford was planning? David couldn't meet her eyes. What until we were already in the air, leaving Russia? By then it was too late to change anything. Volkov said he's here hunting the same rogue faction from '94, that they're using the Taliban as cover to sell nuclear material. Is that true? Crawford and David exchanged glances. We believe so, Crawford admitted. Intelligence suggests the original players from Operation Black Snow have reconstituted under new leadership. They're exploiting the instability in this region to move weapons-grade material, which means Volkov is telling the truth, Morgan pointed out. Partially had Crawford qualified, but he's also executing a personal vendetta. Every Taliban fighter he's trained in Soviet sniper techniques is another weapon pointed at American forces. He's playing a dangerous game. No more dangerous than the one you've been playing, Morgan countered, using me to hunt him without telling me the full story. I was protecting you, David said softly. All these years, I've tried to keep you away from my past, while training me to follow in your footsteps. Morgan couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Teaching me everything you knew about being a sniper, but nothing about who you really were. David looked stricken. I never intended for you to join the military. That was your choice. A choice I made without knowing the whole truth. Morgan turned to Crawford. What happens now? The mission parameters remain unchanged, Crawford replied. Volkov represents a threat to American forces in this region. He needs to be neutralized. By neutralized, you mean killed. Preferably captured, but yes, lethal force is authorized. Morgan looked back at the photograph on the desk. Her father Volkov and the mother she had never known united in a moment of peace before everything fell apart. He could have killed me today, she said. Could have killed the entire SEAL team during the ambush. He didn't. That has to mean something. It means he has a different agenda, Crawford argued. One that may align temporarily with ours, but make no mistake, Nikolai Volkov is not our ally. He was once, David said quietly. He was my brother in arms, my closest friend. And now he's America's enemy, Crawford concluded firmly. A knock at the door interrupted them. Colonel Mitchell entered without waiting for a response. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Neptune Element has discovered something at the compound. Something you need to see. What is it? Crawford asked. Evidence of nuclear material, cesium-137, and something else, documentation linking the operation to a Russian named Anton Baranov. Crawford's expression changed instantly. Baranov, you're certain, positive. Williams sent photos of the documents. Our translator confirmed the name. David and Crawford exchanged significant looks. Who's Baranov? Morgan asked. The man we were hunting in '94, David explained. The leader of the rogue KGB faction. We thought he died in Grozny. Apparently not, Mitchell said. And there's more. Williams found communication logs indicating a major shipment arriving within the next 48 hours. Location unclear, but somewhere in this operational area. Crawford turned to Morgan. Volkov would know about this. Did he mention any shipment? No, but he wasn't exactly forthcoming with operational details. Morgan thought for a moment. He said we'd meet again when I was ready to hear the rest of the story. Maybe this is what he was referring to. Or maybe he's working with Baranov now, Crawford suggested. Revenge makes for strange alliances. Nikolai would never work with Baranov, David said firmly. The man killed Nikolai's entire family during the Chechen conflict. Some hatreds run too deep for any alliance. Mitchell's radio crackled. Colonel Neptune II reporting contacts at the northern perimeter. Multiple hostiles approaching the compound. Get back out there, Mitchell ordered. I'll join you shortly. He turned to the others. Whatever you three need to resolve, do it quickly. We have an emerging situation that requires immediate attention. After Mitchell left, Morgan faced her father and Crawford. I need to get back to my team. Neptune Element needs overwatch. Morgan, David began, there's more you need to know about Volkov, about your mother. It can wait, she replied. Right now, there are Americans in danger. That takes priority over family history. Crawford nodded approvingly. Your father and I will work with intelligence to locate Baranov. You focus on supporting Neptune Element. And Volkov, Morgan asked. Remains a high-value target, Crawford said, but capturing Baranov and securing any nuclear material takes precedence. Morgan gathered her equipment, checking her rifle one final time. As she prepared to leave, her father placed a hand on her shoulder. Be careful, Morgan. Baranov is not the only ghost from my past that haunts these mountains. I'm always careful, Dad. She managed a small smile. After all, I had a good teacher. As Morgan left the room, David turned to Crawford, his expression hardening. We should have told her everything. Not yet, Crawford replied. She has enough to process already. The full truth about Elena's death would only distract her from the mission. And what about Baranov if he recognizes her? He won't. It's been 27 years, and Morgan looks more like you than Elena. David's gaze lingered on the door through which his daughter had departed. I'm not so sure. When I look at her, all I see is Elena. Then pray that Baranov's memory isn't as good as yours, Crawford said grimly. Because if he realizes who she is, the daughter of the woman who betrayed him, he won't rest until she's dead. Night had fallen over the mountains, but the compound was illuminated by the harsh glare of tactical lights as Neptune elements secured the perimeter. The earlier contacts had been identified as local tribesmen, not hostile forces, but everyone remained on high alert. Morgan had resumed her overwatch position, relieving Miller, who had maintained the post during her absence. Through her night vision scope, she could see Williams directing his team as they processed the evidence found in the compound. Her satellite radio crackled. Ghost, this is Neptune 2. We've completed the site exploitation, preparing to exfil in 30 mics. Neptune 2 Ghost. Copy all. I have eyes on all approach routes, no movement detected. As she maintained her vigilant watch, Morgan's mind worked through the implications of everything she had learned. Her mother, her birth mother, had been KGB. Volkov had been her father's closest friend, betrayed by Crawford. And somewhere in these mountains was a man named Baranov, dealing in nuclear materials that could kill thousands if they reached the wrong hands. The personal and the professional had become hopelessly entangled. Yet the mission remained clear. Protect American forces, prevent nuclear material from falling into terrorist hands, neutralize threats. Even if one of those threats was a man who might have been her uncle in another life. A slight movement on the western ridge caught her attention. Morgan adjusted her scope, focusing on the anomaly. Nothing visible, but her instincts honed by years of training with her father told her someone was there. Neptune 2 Ghost. Possible contact, western ridge. Stand by for confirmation. She switched to thermal imaging, scanning the area again. There a heat signature partially concealed behind a rock outcropping. Human-sized stationary. Another sniper. Volkov or one of his trained proxies. Morgan weighed her options. The figure wasn't an immediate threat to Neptune element, positioned as they were, but any sniper in these mountains had to be considered hostile until proven otherwise. As she deliberated, her radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. A voice speaking Russian, pitched low so only someone wearing a headset would hear. The son returns to avenge the father, Morgan Davidovna. Baranov is not alone. Watch the eastern approach. They come for the evidence. Volkov. Morgan immediately shifted her scope to the eastern approach. At first nothing, then movement. Multiple heat signatures advancing in tactical formation. These weren't Taliban fighters. Their movement was too disciplined, too professional. Neptune 2 Ghost. Multiple hostiles approaching from the east. Professional force tactical formation. ETA to your position, 3 minutes. Ghost Neptune 2, copy. How many? Morgan counted quickly. At least 12, possibly more. They're moving like special forces, not insurgents. Roger that. Repositioning to defensive posture. Stand by. As Neptune elements scrambled to defensive positions, Morgan continued tracking the approaching force. Their equipment, visible through her thermal scope, confirmed her suspicions. These were not typical Taliban fighters. They carried modern weapons, moved with professional discipline, and utilized proper small unit tactics. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Baranov is not the only ghost from my past that haunts these mountains. Could these be Baranov's men coming to reclaim the evidence Neptune had discovered? Another transmission in Russian, this time more urgent. They are not here for the evidence, Morgan. They are here for you. Baranov knows who you are. A chill ran down Morgan's spine. How could Baranov possibly know about her? She keyed her satellite radio. Oversight Ghost. Priority transmission for Crawford. Ghost Oversight. Crawford is unavailable. Send your message. Negative Oversight. Eyes only for Crawford. Tell him the son returns to avenge the father. He'll understand. Stand by Ghost. While waiting for a response, Morgan continued tracking the approaching force. They had split into three elements preparing to surround the compound. Neptune element, though highly trained, was outnumbered and potentially outgunned. Ghost Crawford, Authentication Winter Bear. Message received and understood. Where did you hear that phrase, from Volkov? He's on the Western Ridge providing overwatch. Says Baranov knows who I am. How is that possible? A long pause. Because Baranov was there the night your mother died. Morgan felt as if she'd been struck. What you said, my mother Elena left with my father on the helicopter. She did, but she didn't die in Montana. Morgan, she was killed in a CIA safe house in Berlin 1995. Baranov's men found them. Your father managed to escape with you. Elena stayed behind to buy you time. The revelation hit Morgan like a physical blow. Everything she thought she knew about her past was unraveling. Why didn't you tell me? Your father wanted to protect you from the truth, from the life he left behind. Crawford's voice was heavy with regret. Baranov swore he would kill David's entire bloodline. That's why we created new identities for you both in Montana. Why we maintained the fiction about your mother. Morgan struggled to process this information while maintaining her professional focus. The hostile force was now 2 minutes from Neptune's position. Ghost, you need to extract immediately, Crawford continued. If Baranov's men identify you, they will make you their primary target. Negative. Neptune element needs overwatch. I'm not abandoning them. This isn't a request, Sergeant. It's an order. Your father is en route to your position with a QRF team, ETA 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, Neptune could be overrun. Morgan made her decision. I'm staying, sir. Ghost out. She switched back to the tactical frequency. Neptune 2 Ghost. Hostiles approaching from 3 directions. Eastern element is primary at 8 fighters. Northern element, secondary 4 fighters. Southern element, at least 4, possibly more. Ghost Neptune 2, Roger all. We're set for defense. Any air support available. Negative, weather's deteriorated. Aircraft grounded at Bagram. Williams' voice was steady despite the dire situation. Understood. We'll hold as long as we can. Focus your fire on the eastern element when they break cover. Copy Neptune 2. Morgan settled into her shooting rhythm, controlling her breathing as she prepared for the imminent engagement. The eastern element of the hostile force had reached the edge of the compound perimeter. Then unexpectedly they halted. A single figure advanced from their ranks, something in the open. A deliberate, provocative move. Neptune 2 hold fire on the eastern approach. Single individual advancing. Appears to be a parlay attempt. Ghost Neptune 2, holding fire. Can you ID the individual? Morgan adjusted her scope, focusing on the solitary figure. Male, approximately 60 years old, silver-haired, wearing tactical clothing, but standing with the confidence of someone in command. A cold certainty settled in her stomach. Neptune 2 Ghost. I believe that's Baranov. The figure raised a bullhorn, speaking in heavily accented English. American forces, we have no quarrel with you. Surrender the woman sniper, and you may leave unharmed. Morgan felt a chill run down her spine. They knew she was here, knew who she was. Williams' response came immediately. Ghost Neptune 2, negative on that request. We protect our own. The woman is not one of you, Baranov continued through the bullhorn. She is the daughter of traitors. Her blood debt is not your concern. Neptune 2 Ghost, do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. This is a diversion. Even as she said it, Morgan detected movement on her thermal scope. Additional forces moving to flank Neptune's position while Baranov held their attention. Neptune 2 hostile forces flanking your position from the north and south. Baranov is stalling. Copy Ghost, adjusting defensive posture. Morgan had to make a quick decision. The approaching flanking elements were the immediate threat, but Baranov himself stood exposed. A shot she could make easily from her position. Eliminate the head, and perhaps the body would falter. She centered her crosshairs on Baranov's chest, controlling her breathing as she prepared to take the shot. Her finger tightened on the trigger. A voice spoke in her earpiece, not through the radio, but from a short-range tactical frequency. Not yet, Morgan Davidovna. That is exactly what he wants. Volkov. He's exposed, Morgan replied quietly. Clean shot. It's a trap. He's wearing body armor, and he has spotters watching for your muzzle flash. Take the shot and you reveal your position to at least 3 snipers. Morgan hesitated. Could she trust Volkov? He had been truthful so far, but his motivations remained unclear. The flanking elements are the real threat, Volkov continued. I will handle the northern group. You take the southern. Ignore Baranov for now. His time will come. A difficult choice. Trust the man who had once been her father's brother in arms, or take the shot that could end this threat immediately. In the end, professional training won out over personal vendetta. The mission was to protect Neptune element. The flanking forces represented the immediate threat to that objective. Neptune 2 Ghost, engaging southern element. Be advised, possible friendly fire on northern element. Ghost Neptune 2 copy all. We have the east covered. Morgan shifted her aim to the southern flanking element, identifying the lead fighter. Range 780 meters, slight crosswind. She squeezed the trigger. The 50 caliber round found its mark. One down. Simultaneously, she heard the distinctive crack of another sniper rifle. Volkov engaging the northern element. For the next 3 minutes, Morgan operated on pure training and instinct. Target acquisition, breath control. Trigger squeeze, target confirmation, move to next target. 4 shots, 4 kills. The southern flanking element broke off their approach, seeking cover from the deadly accurate fire raining down from the mountains. On the northern side, Volkov was equally effective. The flanking maneuver had been stopped cold, but Baranov remained standing in the open, seemingly unconcerned by the firefight erupting around him. Through her scope, Morgan could see him scanning the ridgelines, searching for the snipers disrupting his assault. Then he looked directly at her position and smiled a cold, knowing expression that sent a chill through her. He sees you, Volkov warned. Move now. Morgan was already packing her essential gear, preparing to relocate. But before she could complete the move, a series of explosions rocked the compound below. Neptune element had rigged the weapons cache with demolition charges as a contingency. Williams had decided to use them. The explosions provided cover for Neptune's movement. Through her scope, Morgan could see the SEAL team executing a fighting withdrawal, moving toward their designated extraction point while maintaining suppressive fire. Ghost Neptune 2, we're displacing to extraction point Bravo. Can you cover our movement? Neptune 2 Ghost, affirm, moving to new overwatch position now. As Morgan repositioned, she kept an eye on Baranov. The Russian commander had retreated to cover following the explosions, but his forces were regrouping, preparing to pursue Neptune element. They will follow your SEALs. Volkov's voice came through her earpiece. Baranov does not abandon a hunt easily. Then we make sure they don't catch up, Morgan replied. Can you maintain overwatch on the northern approach to extraction point Bravo? Da, but be careful, Morgan Davidovna. Baranov did not come all this way for the Americans. He came for you, the daughter of Elena Orlova, the last of the bloodline he swore to eradicate. The personal implications of that statement would have to wait. Right now, Neptune element needed her skills to reach safety. I'll worry about Baranov later, Morgan said firmly. One mission at a time. As she set up her new position overlooking the route Neptune would take to their extraction point, Morgan pushed aside the tumult of personal revelations. Her identity, her mother's death, the complex web of loyalties and betrayals stretching back to the Cold War. All of it would have to wait. The mission came first. Always the mission. Through her scope, she watched Neptune element moving through the darkness, maintaining their tactical discipline despite the chaos of the past hours. Behind them, Baranov's forces were in pursuit, but cautious now, wary of the snipers who had disrupted their initial assault. A deadly game of cat and mouse was unfolding across the moonlit mountains of the Hindu Kush. And Morgan Hayes, daughter of a Soviet defector and a KGB operative trained by both American and Russian traditions, found herself at the center of a conflict decades in the making. The ghosts of the Cold War had risen from their graves. And before this mission ended, more blood would be spilled in the ancient mountains that had witnessed countless wars throughout history. The hunt had only just begun. Dawn broke over the Hindu Kush mountains, painting the jagged peaks in hues of gold and crimson. Morgan watched the changing light through her rifle scope, tracking Neptune element as they moved through a narrow valley below. The 8-man SEAL team had been on the move for 6 hours, evading Baranov's forces after their hasty extraction from the compound. From her elevated position, Morgan could see what the SEALs could not. 3 separate pursuit groups closing in from different directions. Baranov was a skilled tactician using the terrain to maximum advantage. Neptune 2 Ghost, be advised you have multiple pursuit elements for you converging on your position. Recommend immediate diversion to waypoint Echo. William's voice came back immediately. Ghost Neptune 2 copy all. Diverting now. A brief pause. Any sign of our QRF? Negative Neptune 2. Morgan scanned the horizon. The quick reaction force that was supposed to include her father should have arrived hours ago. Stand by for update. She switched to the secure satellite frequency. Oversight Ghost. Neptune element under pursuit by hostile forces. QRF overdue. Request immediate update. Crawford's voice responded, tension evident, even through the static. Ghost oversight. QRF diverted to secondary objective. High-value intelligence indicates nuclear material moving through Sector 7. Estimated yield sufficient to contaminate major population center. Morgan processed this. The mission parameters had shifted again. Oversight request clarification. Is Neptune element to proceed to extraction or divert to intercept nuclear material? Standby Ghost. While waiting for a response, Morgan continued tracking the pursuers. They were good moving in coordinated patterns using cover effectively. These weren't Taliban fighters. They were trained operatives. Baranov's men. Her earpiece crackled the short-range tactical frequency Volkov had used earlier. They won't abandon your SEALs, Morgan Davidovna. But they also cannot ignore the greater threat. Volkov's voice was calm, pragmatic. A familiar dilemma from our Cold War days. Sacrifice the few to save the many. Where are you? Morgan asked quietly. Close enough to watch your back. Far enough not to be a distraction. A pause. Your father taught you well shifting positions every 20 minutes, maintaining multiple escape routes. He did the same in Afghanistan. Morgan didn't respond to the personal observation. What do you know about this nuclear material? Cesium-137. Baranov has been collecting it for years, enough now to build several dirty bombs. Volkov's tone hardened. This was always his specialty, using terror to achieve political objectives. Who's he working for? Himself. Always himself. Volkov paused. Though he maintains connections with elements in Russian intelligence who prefer the old ways. The Cold War never truly ended, Morgan. It merely changed form. The satellite radio interrupted. Ghost oversight. New mission parameters. Neptune element is to proceed to Rally Point Juliet for immediate extraction. You are to link up with Task Force Echo in Sector 7. Authentication code Crimson Dawn. Morgan felt a chill. Crimson Dawn was the highest priority designation, direct presidential authorization. Copy oversight, proceeding to Sector 7 after Neptune reaches extraction. She hesitated. Is my father with Task Force Echo? Affirmative Ghost. David is serving as technical advisor. They are tracking the nuclear material to its destination. Crawford's voice softened slightly. Be careful, Morgan. Baranov will be watching for you specifically. Understood. Ghost out. She switched back to the tactical frequency. Neptune 2 Ghost. New orders. You are to proceed to Rally Point Juliet for immediate extraction. I'll maintain overwatch until you're clear. Ghost Neptune 2 copy all. Moving to Juliet now. Williams paused. What about you? I have a secondary objective. Different extraction plan. Understood. Good hunting, Ghost. Neptune 2 out. Morgan began calculating her route to Sector 7. It would be a challenging journey, 15 kilometers through hostile territory alone. I know where you're going, Volkov's voice came through her earpiece again. I'm going there too. This isn't your fight, Morgan replied. It has been my fight for 30 years, Volkov corrected. Since the day Baranov murdered my family in Grozny, some debts can only be paid in blood. Morgan considered her options. Working with Volkov was against protocol, against her orders. But he had knowledge she needed about Baranov, about the terrain, about the nuclear threat. Sometimes completing the mission required unconventional decisions. If we do this, she said carefully, we do it my way. This is an American operation. Of course, Volkov agreed, a hint of amusement in his voice. Just as we said in the old days, American resources, Russian expertise. Meet me at the Eastern Ridge after Neptune reaches extraction. And Volkov, if this is some kind of setup, I won't hesitate to put a round through your head. I would expect nothing less from David's daughter. His voice grew serious. But remember, Morgan Davidovna Baranov is not just another target. He is a ghost from a time when rules were different, when men did terrible things in the name of ideology. I've dealt with ghosts before, Morgan replied, shifting her position to maintain overwatch on Neptune's movement. Yes, Volkov agreed. But this ghost knows your name, knows your blood, and he has waited a very long time for revenge. 2 hours later, Morgan watched as Neptune Element boarded the extraction helicopters at Rally Point Juliet. Williams gave a final wave in her general direction before climbing aboard a small acknowledgement of the sniper who had helped keep his team alive. As the helicopters lifted off, disappearing over the mountains, Morgan felt a curious sense of isolation. For the first time since the mission began, she was truly on her own, or not quite alone. They made it safely, Volkov observed, materializing from the shadows of a rocky outcropping. In daylight, Morgan could see him clearly for the first time, tall and powerfully built, despite his age, with the weathered face of a man who had spent decades in harsh conditions. His equipment was a mix of modern tactical gear and older Russian-made items, all meticulously maintained. Sector 7 is 15 kilometers northeast, Morgan said, all business. Rough terrain. We need to move quickly? Volkov nodded. I know a faster route, an old smuggling path from the Soviet days. It cuts through the mountains rather than going around them. Lead the way, Morgan said after a moment's hesitation, but I'll be watching. I would be disappointed if you weren't. Volkov smiled briefly, a flash of warmth in his otherwise stern features. Your father was the same way. Trust but verify. A good Russian principle the Americans adopted. As they began their journey, moving quickly but carefully through the rugged landscape, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. Here was a man who had shared her father's most dangerous missions, who had known her birth mother, who had been declared an enemy of the United States, yet who now fought alongside her against a common threat. You have questions, Volkov said, eventually reading her thoughts. Ask them while we have time. Morgan considered where to begin. My mother, Elena, what was she like? Volkov's expression softened. Brilliant, fearless. She could enter a room and instantly read every person in it, their motivations, their weaknesses, their secrets. He glanced at Morgan. You have her eyes, and her ability to see what others miss. She was KGB. Yes, a deep cover operative assigned to monitor American intelligence activities in Eastern Europe. That's how she met your father and Crawford. And how did she and my father fall in love? Volkov chuckled. It wasn't supposed to happen. The classic spy story, the operative who falls for her target. He looked at Morgan. Your father was on our side then, remember? So she betrayed her country for him. No, she betrayed her country because she discovered something that changed everything. Operation Phoenix. Morgan frowned. What was Operation Phoenix? The plan to prolong the Cold War. Certain elements within both the KGB and CIA had grown powerful during decades of conflict. They didn't want it to end. Volkov's voice hardened. Baranov was their instrument. He orchestrated terrorist attacks, assassinations, nuclear incidents, all designed to maintain tension between East and West. And my mother discovered this. She found evidence in 1981 just as the Soviet Union was collapsing. She brought it to your father, who brought it to me. The three of us then approached Crawford, who was CIA station chief in Berlin. That's what led to Operation Black Snow. Volkov nodded. A joint mission to eliminate Baranov and his network. But something went wrong. We were compromised, Volkov said grimly. By whom? That is the question that has haunted me for 30 years. They fell silent as they navigated a particularly treacherous section of the path, a narrow ledge overlooking a sheer drop. When they reached safer ground, Morgan continued her questioning. Crawford said my mother died in Berlin in '95. That Baranov's men found them. Volkov's expression darkened. Yes, it was my fault. I had escaped from prison and tracked them to Berlin, wanting to warn them that Baranov was still alive. But I led him straight to them. You were there when she died. I arrived too late. The safe house was already under attack. Your father was trying to hold them off while Elena got you to safety. Volkov's voice grew distant with memory. I helped them break through the perimeter. Your father took you. Elena stayed behind with me to cover your escape. You were with her when she died. Morgan realized. Volkov nodded, his eyes haunted. She took 3 bullets meant for me. Her last words were about you, that you must never know the world she came from, that you should grow up American free from the shadows of the Cold War. Morgan absorbed this, trying to reconcile these revelations with the life she had known in Montana, the quiet childhood with her father and Anna, the woman she had called mother, for 8 years before cancer took her. And Baranov, how did he survive all these years? He disappeared after Berlin. Rumors placed him in Chechnya, then Iraq, then various former Soviet republics. Always moving, always plotting. Volkov gestured at the mountains around them, until he resurfaced here using the chaos of America's longest war as cover for his true objective. The nuclear material. Yes, but not just for terrorism, for leverage. Baranov has always understood that power comes from the ability to threaten, not just to act. They crested a ridge and Volkov held up his hand, signaling a halt. Below them stretched a broad valley, and in the distance, a small convoy of vehicles moved along a crude road. There, Volkov said, pointing, 4 vehicles. The second one will be carrying the material. Morgan raised her binoculars, studying the convoy. How can you be sure? Because that's how I would do it. The lead vehicle searches for threats. The third and fourth provide security. Volkov removed his pack, extracting a spotting scope. We should wait here. Your task force Echo will likely intercept them near the pass 3 kilometers ahead. Morgan set up her rifle, using a rocky outcropping for cover. Through her scope, she could see the convoy more clearly. 4 Toyota Hilux trucks, heavily armed men visible in the back of each one. Those aren't Taliban, she observed. Different equipment, professional. Former Spetsnaz, Volkov confirmed. Baranov always preferred Russian operatives for sensitive operations. Can you identify Baranov? Volkov studied the convoy through his spotting scope. Not present. He rarely exposes himself unnecessarily. Morgan keyed her satellite radio. Oversight Ghost. I have eyes on the convoy in Sector 7. 4 vehicles, approximately 20 personnel, professional operatives, likely former Russian special forces. Request update on Task Force Echo. Ghost Oversight. Task Force Echo is in position at the mountain pass 2 clicks from your location. They are preparing to intercept. Hold your position and stand by. Copy. Oversight, standing by. Volkov was studying the valley intently. Something isn't right, he murmured. This is too obvious. Baranov would never move nuclear material so blatantly. Unless it's a decoy, Morgan realized. A diversion. Exactly. Volkov scanned the surrounding terrain. The real shipment will be moving through a different route somewhere less obvious. Morgan considered this. If you were Baranov, where would you move it? There's an old Soviet bunker complex 15 kilometers west of here. Built during the Afghan war to store sensitive materials, deep underground, hardened against airstrikes. Why would he take nuclear material there? Because it's the perfect place to assemble dirty bombs without detection. And because it has something no other location in these mountains has a helicopter landing zone large enough for a transport aircraft. Morgan immediately understood the implications. He's planning to fly the weapons out. Likely to multiple destinations. Maximum impact. She keyed her to radio again. Oversight Ghost. Be advised. Convoy may be a decoy. Requesting permission to investigate alternate location Soviet bunker complex in Grid Square 41 SUV 772463. Ghost Oversight. That location is outside your operational area. Maintain position and support Task Force Echo. Morgan exchanged glances with Volkov. They're not seeing the bigger picture. They rarely do, Volkov replied. Bureaucracy moves slower than operatives in the field. A difficult decision confronted Morgan. Follow her orders and potentially miss the real threat, or trust Volkov's instincts and act independently. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Sometimes a sniper must trust what they see through their own scope, not what others tell them is there. She made her decision. We're going to the bunker complex, but first I need to warn Task Force Echo about the possible decoy. Morgan transmitted one final message. Oversight Ghost. Be advised, I am investigating Soviet bunker complex as possible alternate location for nuclear material. Will report findings. Before Crawford could respond, she switched off the satellite radio. Plausible deniability. If she couldn't hear the order to stand down, she couldn't be accused of directly disobeying it. Your father would be proud, Volkov observed with a hint of amusement. He made the same choice in Grozny, following the mission rather than the orders. Let's move, Morgan said, ignoring the comment. We have a lot of ground to cover. The Soviet bunker complex loomed before them, a concrete monstrosity half buried in the mountainside. Decades of weathering and neglect had left the exterior crumbling, but the massive blast doors remained intact. Appears abandoned, Morgan observed as they surveyed the complex from a concealed position 400 meters away. Look closer, Volkov directed. Fresh tire tracks. Guards positioned at the west and north approaches, staying in shadows to avoid aerial detection. Morgan studied the area through her scope. Sure enough, she could now make out 2 sentries expertly camouflaged among the rocks. Professional security, definitely not Taliban, she agreed. How do we get inside? There's a maintenance tunnel, Volkov explained. Designed as an emergency escape route, the entrance is hidden in a drainage culvert 200 meters east. You seem very familiar with this facility. I helped design its security systems in 1985, Volkov admitted. Another lifetime ago. They made their approach carefully, using natural cover in the lengthening afternoon shadows. The maintenance tunnel was exactly where Volkov had indicated, a narrow concrete pipe, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, hidden behind a rusted grate. No guards, Morgan noted as they reached the entrance. They wouldn't expect anyone to know about this access point, Volkov replied, working to remove the grate quietly. Only senior KGB and Spetsnaz commanders were briefed on its existence. And Baranov would have been one of them. Yes, but he always considered such details beneath his attention. One of his few weaknesses. The tunnel was dark and claustrophobic, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees through decades of dust and debris. After 100 meters, it opened into a small maintenance room filled with rusted electrical equipment. Volkov led the way to a heavy metal door. Beyond this point, we enter the main complex. Be ready. If I'm right about Baranov's operation, there will be significant security inside. Morgan checked her weapons, primary sidearm, backup pistol, combat knife. Her sniper rifle was secured across her back, less useful in the close confines of the bunker. Remember, Volkov cautioned, our objective is confirmation of the nuclear material. Once verified, we extract and report. This is not the time for a direct confrontation with Baranov. Understood. Volkov opened the door slowly, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. They moved silently through the complex, encountering no personnel in the initial sections. But as they proceeded, deeper signs of recent activity became evident. Fresh footprints in the dust, newly installed lighting, modern security cameras mounted at intersections. They've restored power to the facility, Volkov whispered, and added new security. We need to find the main storage area, level B3. They located a stairwell leading downward, descending cautiously. At the B3 level, the change was dramatic. The corridor was well lit, clean, and showed signs of regular use. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead, speaking Russian. Volkov gestured for Morgan to wait, listening intently to the distant conversation. 2 technicians, he translated quietly, discussing preparation of the material for transport. They mentioned 6 devices nearly ready. 6, Morgan felt cold dread. That's enough to hit multiple cities simultaneously. Duh. A coordinated attack, Baranov's specialty. They advanced carefully toward the voices, reaching a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Volkov pointed to the right branch. Main storage would be that way. As they turned the corner, a security door blocked their path. Modern, with an electronic keypad. Problem, Morgan whispered. Volkov studied the keypad. Soviet minds think alike. The original override code might still work. He entered a sequence of numbers. The light remained red. Try adding the facility designation at the end, Morgan suggested. Standard protocol update. Volkov nodded approvingly, entering a longer sequence. The light turned green and the door clicked open. Beyond lay a large chamber filled with scientific equipment, and there, in specialized containment units along the far wall, glowed the unmistakable lead canisters used for transporting radioactive materials. There's our confirmation, Morgan said, taking photos with a specialized camera designed to work in secure facilities. 6 containers, just as they said. Volkov moved to examine the equipment. This is advanced. Baranov has serious backing. He pointed to several documents on a workbench. Manufacturing specifications, target locations. Morgan photographed the documents quickly. We need to extract now. Report this to oversight. A voice spoke from behind them, calm-cultured with the barest trace of a Russian accent. I'm afraid that won't be possible. They turned to find a silver-haired man standing in the doorway flanked by two armed guards. Anton Baranov, the same man Morgan had seen through her scope at the compound. Nikolai Volkov, Baranov continued, a cold smile playing across his features. After all these years, and Morgan Hayes, or should I say Orlova, you have your mother's eyes. Morgan raised her sidearm, but the guards already had their weapons trained on her and Volkov. I wouldn't, Baranov advised. My men are under orders to target the containment units if shots are fired. The resulting radiation would be most unpleasant for everyone in this room. Volkov stepped forward slightly. You always were a coward, Anton, hiding behind threats. And you always lacked vision, Nikolai, still fighting the last war while the world moved on. Baranov gestured to his guards. Secure them, separate rooms for questioning. As the guards moved forward, Volkov tensed. Morgan caught his eye, giving a minute shake of her head. Not here. Not with the nuclear material at risk. They surrendered their weapons, allowing themselves to be led from the room. Morgan calculated their options, memorizing the layout of the facility, noting the number and positioning of guards they passed. An opportunity would come. It had to. The guards took them to level B2, placing them in separate storage rooms converted to makeshift cells. Before the door closed on her, Morgan heard Baranov speak to Volkov. We have much to discuss, old friend, about betrayal, about Elena, about the price of loyalty. Then the heavy door slammed shut, leaving Morgan alone with her thoughts and the ticking clock of a nuclear threat. Hours passed. Morgan had systematically examined every inch of her cell, finding no immediate means of escape. The door was solid steel, the ventilation duct too small for a person, the single light fixture securely mounted in the concrete ceiling. She sat on the floor back against the wall, conserving energy while maintaining situational awareness. Her father's training had prepared her for captivity, mentally cataloging Time Sound's guard rotations. The door opened suddenly. Baranov entered, followed by a single guard who remained by the door. Staff Sergeant Morgan Hayes, Baranov began pulling up the room's only chair to sit facing her. Decorated Army sniper, 47 confirmed kills across Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. Quite impressive. Morgan remained silent. Your colleague Volkov was less taciturn, Baranov continued, though perhaps not as informative as I'd hoped. Old Spetsnaz training dies hard. The implication was clear: they had hurt Volkov or were threatening to. Morgan kept her expression neutral. What do you want, Baranov? Direct like your mother. Baranov smiled thinly. What I want is quite simple. To complete my work and without further interference. The weapons are nearly ready. In 12 hours, they will be on their way to their destinations. And you're telling me this because I'm offering you a choice, Sergeant Hayes. The same choice I offered your mother in Berlin. Join me. Bring your considerable skills to my organization. Or die here knowing that everyone you care about will follow. Your father, your friends in the American military. Everyone. Morgan met his gaze evenly. My mother chose death over joining you. I understand why now. Baranov's expression hardened. Elena made a mother's choice, sacrificing herself in the hope that her child might live. A futile gesture, as it turns out. The bloodline ends with you one way or another. You've been hunting my family for 27 years, Morgan observed. That's a long time to hold a grudge. This isn't about a grudge, it's about justice. Your parents betrayed their country, their oath, their purpose. They helped dismantle an empire. Baranov leaned forward. Do you know what the fall of the Soviet Union really meant, Sergeant, not freedom as your American propaganda claims? It meant chaos, suffering, the strong preying on the weak with no restraint. And your nuclear weapons will fix that. They will restore balance. Remind the world of the consequences of American hegemony. Baranov stood. You have 1 hour to consider my offer. Cooperation or a painful death followed by the systematic elimination of everyone connected to David Hayes. After he left, Morgan resumed her methodical assessment of the cell. Baranov's visit had provided valuable intelligence, the timeline, the nature of the threat, the fact that Volkov was still alive. Most importantly, she had observed the guard's keycard, standard military design, worn on a lanyard around his neck. Access to that card would be the first step in any escape plan. She didn't have long to wait. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. A different guard entered carrying a tray with water and basic rations. "Eat," he commanded in heavily accented English. "Baranov wants you strong for transport." Morgan noted his positioning, careful to stay out of lunging range, hand resting on his sidearm. Professional. This wouldn't be easy. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, accepting the tray. "Not your concern." The guard moved to leave. "Wait," Morgan said, adopting a frightened tone. "Please, I need to know what's going to happen to me." The guard hesitated, turning back a mistake. In that moment of distraction, Morgan struck. The metal tray flew toward his face as she launched herself forward in a fluid motion taught by her father years ago. The guard was good already, drawing his weapon despite the tray impacting his face. But Morgan was better. Her first strike targeted his throat, collapsing his windpipe. The second broke his wrist as he attempted to raise his pistol. The third was a precise blow to the temple that rendered him unconscious. The entire encounter lasted less than 4 seconds and was conducted in near silence. Morgan quickly appropriated his weapon, radio, and keycard. She dragged his unconscious form behind the door. If someone glanced in, they wouldn't immediately see him. Using the keycard, she exited the cell, moving swiftly but cautiously through the corridor. According to her mental map of the facility, Volkov would likely be held in an adjacent storage room. The keycard worked on the second door she tried. Inside, Volkov sat against the far wall, his face bruised, but his eyes alert. "Took you long enough," he commented dryly. "Had to wait for room service," Morgan replied, handing him the guard's sidearm. "We have a situation. 6 nuclear devices shipping within 12 hours. Volkov checked the weapon. Baranov visited you too." "Yes, made the same offer he gave my mother. And declined just as firmly, I see. We need to reach the communication center, level B1. If we can contact Task Force Echo." "First priority is disabling those weapons," Volkov countered. "We might not get another chance." Morgan considered this. The technicians mentioned a failsafe, some kind of remote detonator Baranov keeps with him at all times. "Then we find Baranov. He'll be in the command center. Highest security, most guards." Morgan checked her weapon. "Then that's where we're going." They moved through the facility like ghosts, using Volkov's knowledge of the layout to avoid patrols. When confrontation was unavoidable, they struck with silent efficiency. Morgan, with her modern close-quarters combat training, Volkov, with the lethal techniques of old-school Spetsnaz. At level B1, they encountered heavier security guards stationed at key junctions, regular radio check-ins. They neutralized a 2-man patrol, appropriating their uniforms and communication devices to monitor the security network. "Command center is 50 meters ahead," Volkov whispered as they pressed against a wall near their objective. "Heavy door, at least 4 guards inside with Baranov. Any other access points?" "Ventilation system runs above the entire level." Volkov pointed to a maintenance panel in the ceiling. "That should connect to the main duct." Using a fallen guard's knife, they removed the panel, revealing a narrow metal duct. Morgan went first, moving silently through the confined space. Volkov followed his larger frame, making progress more difficult. They reached a grate overlooking the command center, a large room filled with monitoring equipment, communications gear, and digital displays showing various parts of the facility. Baranov stood at a central console, speaking to several technicians. 4 armed guards maintained positions around the room. Morgan studied the situation through the grate. Baranov wore something around his neck, a small metal device on a chain, the fail-safe detonator, presumably. She gestured to Volkov, pointing to the guards and mouthing 4 targets. He nodded in understanding her intent. A coordinated attack from above, using surprise to neutralize the superior numbers. Morgan silently removed the grate, setting it aside in the duct. She extracted a flashbang grenade from the equipment she'd taken from the guards. One chance to get this right. She caught Volkov's eye, held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. The flashbang flew through the opening, detonating in a blinding, deafening explosion. Morgan dropped through immediately after landing in a combat roll that positioned her behind the nearest guard. A precise strike to the base of his skull put him down permanently. Volkov followed, engaging 2 guards simultaneously with brutal efficiency. The 4th guard managed to fire a single shot wide, impacting a monitoring station in a shower of sparks, before Morgan neutralized him with a double tap to the chest. Baranov, momentarily stunned by the flashbang, was already recovering, reaching for the device around his neck. Volkov lunged toward him, tackling the older man to the ground. "The detonator!" Volkov shouted as they struggled. Morgan moved to assist, but the technicians were fleeing, triggering an alarm as they exited. The facility erupted with blaring sirens. Baranov fought with surprising strength for his age, landing a solid blow to Volkov's injured face. As Volkov momentarily recoiled, Baranov reached again for the device. Morgan aimed her weapon. "Stop or I shoot." Baranov froze, a cold smile spreading across his face. "Go ahead, Morgan Orlova, but understand what this means." He held up the device, a small cylindrical object with a single button. "Dead man's switch. If my heart stops, if this leaves my possession, the weapons detonate immediately right here in this facility." Volkov, blood streaming from his reopened wounds, rose to his feet. "He's bluffing." "Am I?" Baranov challenged. "Your mother made the same calculation in Berlin. She chose to believe I wouldn't destroy myself to win. She was wrong then, too." The standoff was interrupted by sounds of approaching guards. Boots pounding on concrete shouted orders. "You have one final choice," Baranov said. "Die here or escape while you can. Either way, my work continues." Morgan met Volkov's gaze, a silent communication passing between them. They needed a third option. "The communication center," Volkov said suddenly. "We can still warn your people about the weapons." Morgan nodded slightly, understanding his intent. Keep Baranov talking while formulating a real plan. "A futile gesture," Baranov dismissed. "The weapons ship in hours. Your military bureaucracy takes days to respond." "Unless I contact someone who can act immediately," Morgan replied. "Someone with direct presidential authority." Baranov's expression flickered, the first hint of uncertainty. "Crawford, he's here, isn't he?" With Task Force Echo. The approaching guards were close now, seconds away from the command center. "We need to move," Volkov urged. "Now." Morgan backed toward the door, the weapon still trained on Baranov. "This isn't over." "For you it is," Baranov replied confidently. "This facility has only one exit. My men control it." "Then it's fortunate we're not planning to use it," Volkov said with grim satisfaction. They retreated from the command center, moving swiftly down the corridor toward the communication hub. Behind them, guards poured into the area they had just vacated, Baranov shouting orders. "He was lying about the dead man's switch," Volkov said as they ran. "It's a remote trigger, not a failsafe. He wouldn't risk accidental detonation." "You're sure, "No, but I know Baranov. He's always valued his life above all else." They reached the communication center, a smaller room filled with radio equipment and satellite uplinks. Two technicians surrendered immediately upon seeing their weapons. "Secure the door," Morgan ordered Volkov as she moved to the satellite terminal. Her military training included emergency communications protocols, including how to establish a direct line to JSOC headquarters. While Volkov barricaded the door using equipment racks, Morgan activated the system, inputting the highest priority authentication codes. Ghost to Oversight, Crimson Dawn Protocol, Authentication Code, Sierra Tango 497 Bravo. Static, then Crawford's voice cut through. Ghost Oversight, Authentication confirmed, Status Report. Nuclear material confirmed at Soviet bunker complex. 6 weapons prepared for transport within hours. Facility compromised. Hostiles in pursuit. Request immediate kinetic response. Understood, Ghost. Task Force Echo is 20 minutes from your location. Hang tight. Volkov, listening as the barricaded door shook his head. "We don't have 20 minutes. Guards attempting to breach now." Morgan made a swift decision. "Oversight, be advised. Facility contains active nuclear material. Precision strike required. Transmitting coordinates for bunker level B3 storage chamber Alpha. Ghost, you're asking for an airstrike on your position." "Affirmative, Oversight. It's the only way to ensure destruction of the weapons before transport." A long pause. "Understood, Ghost. Extract if possible. Strike authorized in 15 minutes regardless of personnel status." Volkov looked at Morgan with newfound respect. "Sacrificing yourself to complete the mission. Your father would be proud." "I'm not planning on dying today," Morgan replied, moving to a ventilation schematic displayed on one of the monitors. "There's an emergency ventilation shaft that leads to the surface, designed for radiation containment failures. Access point maintenance junction B2 level." Morgan pointed to the schematic. "2 levels up past the security checkpoint." The door shuddered as guards began attempting to force it open. That barricade won't hold long, Volkov observed. Then we make our own exit. Morgan removed a breaching charge from her tactical vest standard equipment for special operations forces. Stand back. She placed the charge on the far wall, which, according to the schematic, bordered a maintenance quarter. The controlled explosion blasted a hole large enough to pass through, revealing the quarter beyond. Impressive, Volkov commented as they moved through the breach. American equipment has improved since my day. They navigated the maintenance quarter, encountering minimal resistance. Most of Baranov's forces were concentrated around the command center and main access points. At level B2, they located the emergency ventilation access, a narrow shaft with a ladder leading upward. Ladies first, Volkov gestured with mock gallantry. Morgan began climbing, counting the rungs to track their vertical progress. Behind her, Volkov followed, occasionally glancing down to ensure they weren't pursued. Baranov won't let us escape easily, he warned as they climbed. He'll have men covering all surface exits. Then we'll have to be faster, smarter, or better armed, Morgan replied pragmatically. The shaft seemed endless, hundreds of rungs stretching upward through the mountain. Morgan's arms burned with fatigue, but she maintained a steady pace. According to the schematic, the shaft would emerge approximately 500 meters from the main facility entrance, hopefully outside Baranov's immediate security perimeter. Finally, they reached the top, a heavy circular hatch secured from the inside. Morgan released the locking mechanism, pushing upward with her remaining strength. The hatch opened to reveal the night sky above, stars brilliant in the clear mountain air. They emerged onto a rocky outcropping, the bunker complex barely visible in the distance. Morgan checked her watch. 7 minutes until the airstrike. We need to put distance between us and that facility, she said, orienting herself using the stars. Task Force Echo should be approaching from the east. Then we go east, Volkov agreed. Quickly, they moved across the rugged terrain, staying low and using natural cover. The mountain night was silent except for their controlled breathing and the occasional distant call of a nocturnal bird. 4 minutes remaining. Movement ahead, Volkov whispered, dropping to a prone position behind a boulder. Perimeter guards. Morgan observed 2 armed men patrolling the ridge line ahead, blocking their most direct route to safety. We go around, she decided. No time for engagement. They diverted south, adding precious minutes to their journey but avoiding detection. The extra distance meant they would be closer to the facility when the strike hit. 2 minutes remaining. We need cover, Morgan said, scanning the terrain. Deep cover. Volkov pointed to a depression in the ground ahead, a dry stream bed with steep banks. There, it's the best we'll find. They sprinted the final distance, sliding into the stream bed and pressing themselves against the earth. As the countdown reached 0, the mountain lit up with hellish illumination as precision munitions struck the bunker complex. The ground shook violently beneath them, rocks and debris raining down around their position. Then came the secondary explosions, the nuclear material detonating in a catastrophic chain reaction. A massive shockwave rolled across the landscape, powerful enough to uproot small trees and send boulders tumbling down slopes. Morgan and Volkov huddled in their meager shelter, covering their heads as the world seemed to end around them. The heat was incredible, even at this distance, like standing next to a giant furnace. When the initial explosion subsided, Morgan risked raising her head to look. Where the bunker entrance had been a massive crater, now yawned flames licking at its edges. Secondary fires burned across the landscape, and a mushroom cloud of dust and debris rose into the night sky. Oversight Ghost. She transmitted on her emergency radio. Strike confirmed on target, requesting immediate extraction. Static filled the channel for long moments before a response came. Ghost Oversight. Task Force Echo diverting to your position. Deploy emergency beacon. Morgan activated the beacon on her tactical vest, a powerful signal that would guide the extraction team to their location. Beside her, Volkov surveyed the destruction with grim satisfaction. Baranov was inside. You're certain. He would never leave those weapons. They were his life's work. Volkov turned to her. It's over, Morgan Davidovna. The blood debt is paid. Before she could respond, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors cut through the night. Task Force Echo approaching. What will you do now? Morgan asked Volkov. Disappear again. He smiled slightly. It's what ghosts do best. You could come in. I could arrange protection immunity. Volkov shook his head. Some sins can never be fully absolved, Morgan. not even by saving the world. The helicopters were visible now, searchlights sweeping the terrain as they approached. Your father will be on those helicopters, Volkov continued. Tell him, tell him I kept my promise to Elena. I protected her daughter when it mattered most. Morgan felt a complex mix of emotions, gratitude, respect, and the weight of a history she was only beginning to understand. Will I see you again? Perhaps, when the world needs old ghosts. Volkov checked his weapon, preparing to depart. Remember what your father and I learned the hard way, Morgan. The Cold War never truly ended. It just transformed. With that, he melted into the darkness of the Afghan night, another shadow among many in these ancient mountains. The helicopters landed nearby, disgorging armed men in tactical gear. Among them, moving with purpose, despite his age, was David Hayes. Father and daughter embraced amid the chaos, two survivors of a conflict that had spanned generations. Volkov, David asked, looking past her into the darkness. Gone, Morgan replied, but he kept his promise. David nodded, understanding the significance. And Baranov, eliminated, along with his weapons. Relief washed over her father's face, the culmination of a 30-year nightmare. As task force echoes secured the area, Crawford approached his expression, a mix of pride and concern. You disobeyed direct orders, Sergeant Hayes, he said, though without real anger. I completed the mission, sir, Morgan replied simply. Crawford smiled slightly. Yes, you did. He gestured to the helicopter. Let's go home. There will be time for debriefing later. As they boarded the aircraft, Morgan looked back at the burning crater that had been Baranov's facility. So much history had ended there. Cold War rivalries, personal vendettas, family tragedies. Yet as Volkov had said, some conflicts never truly end. They merely transform, waiting for the next generation to confront them. The helicopter lifted off, carrying them away from the Hindu Kush mountains and the ghosts that haunted them. But Morgan knew with certainty that she would return someday. There were always more missions, more threats, more wrongs to right. After all, she was her father's daughter. And in their family duty was a legacy that transcended generations. 3 weeks later, at a small Montana cabin surrounded by pine forests, Morgan stood beside her father on the porch. The evening air carried the scent of approaching autumn, a world away from the heat and dust of Afghanistan. Will you stay in the Army? David asked, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. For now, Morgan replied, though JSOC has offered a more specialized role. David nodded, understanding what remained unsaid. Her skills were too valuable to waste on conventional deployments. Your mother would be proud, he said after a long silence. Elena always believed in protecting the innocent, even when she worked for those who didn't. Tell me about her, Morgan requested. The real story. All of it. David sighed, decades of carefully maintained secrets, finally ready to be shared. She was extraordinary, Morgan. Brilliant, fearless, and with a moral compass that ultimately led her to defect. She saw through the propaganda on both sides, recognized that ordinary people are the same everywhere, wanting only to live in peace. As David spoke, painting a picture of the mother, Morgan had never known a figure appeared at the edge of the forest, tall, silver-haired, moving with military precision despite his age. Nikolai Volkov, watching from a distance, a ghost from another time. David followed her gaze, spotting his old partner. Without hesitation, he raised his hand in greeting, a gesture of reconciliation across decades of separation. Volkov returned the salute, then melted back into the forest as silently as he had appeared. Will he ever come in from the cold? Morgan asked. Some men are too accustomed to the shadows to ever fully step into the light, David replied. But he found his redemption, as did I. Morgan understood then that her family legacy was more complex than she had ever imagined. Not just the quiet Montana childhood she remembered, but a sweeping saga of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring search for justice in an unjust world. The sun dipped below the mountains, casting long shadows across the land. But for the first time in 30 years, those shadows no longer concealed deadly secrets or lurking threats. The ghosts of the Hindu Kush had finally found peace. And so had the daughter of David Hayes and Elena Orlova, the last echo of a Cold War that had shaped the world in ways both visible and hidden. As darkness fell, father and daughter remained on the porch, sharing stories of a past now fully revealed and contemplating a future no longer haunted by old specters. Some debts, it seemed, could finally be paid in full.